When my only daughter told me I wasn't invited to her wedding because I would embarrass her with my rags, I felt my heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. 3 days later, I left a bank statement on her desk showing millions in my account. That's when I realized money doesn't just talk. It reveals who's been lying all along. If you're watching this, please subscribe and leave a comment if you've ever discovered someone's true colors when money entered the picture. Trust me, what happened next will make your jaw drop. The morning it all began was unremarkable. Just another Tuesday in April, with spring sunshine streaming through my faded kitchen curtains. The same curtains I'd sewn by hand 15 years ago when Rebecca moved out for college. I remember thinking I should replace them someday, but somehow there was always something more important to spend money on. That was my life, making do, stretching dollars, and keeping my secrets close. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the cheap ceramic mug I'd bought at the dollar store swirl with memories. Rebecca had been engaged to Walter for nearly 6 months, and I'd been waiting, aching, to hear about their wedding plans. Each day that passed without an invitation or even a conversation about the date felt like a small betrayal, but I kept telling myself she was just busy. Successful people are always busy, and my Rebecca had become very successful. The phone felt heavy in my hand as I dialed her number. My heart drummed against my ribs, hope and anxiety tangled together like old friends. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. Hello. Her voice was clipped, distracted. I could hear the rustle of papers in the background, the soft murmur of an expensive office. Rebecca, honey, it's Mom. I tried to keep my voice bright, though I noticed she hadn't saved my number in her phone. I was wondering if you've set a date for the wedding yet? I've been saving up to buy a nice dress, and I thought maybe… Mom. The single word cut through my sentence like a blade. We already got married. The room seemed to tilt around me. My coffee went cold in an instant. What? When? I managed to whisper. Last weekend. At the Westmere Country Club. Walter's family arranged everything. I gripped the edge of my kitchen table, steadying myself. But why didn't you tell me? I'm your mother, Becky. Don't call me that. Her voice hardened. Look, it was a high-class affair. Walter's family has connections. The governor was there, for God's sake. We only invited rich people who matter. Each word was a slap. I would have liked to see my only daughter get married, I said softly. That's when she said it, the words that would change everything between us forever. You would only embarrass us with your rags, Mom, so stop being so dramatic. I couldn't have you showing up in some cheap dress from Goodwill. Walter's mother wore Chanel. For a moment, silence filled my ears. The phone grew heavy in my hand. My own daughter, the child I raised through hunger, rain, and sleepless nights, had erased me from the most important day of her life because I was too poor. Tears threatened, but I refused to give her the satisfaction. I just smiled, though she couldn't see it. I understand, I whispered. Congratulations. I hope you'll be very happy. Thanks. I've got to go. I have a meeting. She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there for what felt like hours, the disconnected phone still pressed to my ear, as if waiting for her to call back and tell me it was all a cruel joke. But she didn't. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence, marking each second of my new reality. My daughter was ashamed of me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, her words echoing in my mind. You would only embarrass us with your rags. How had we come to this? Where had I gone wrong? I got up and padded to the hallway closet, pulling down a dusty photo album from the top shelf. Inside were pictures of Rebecca growing up, a gap-toothed 6-year-old holding up a drawing, a gangly preteen with braces at her piano recital, a beautiful young woman in her homemade prom dress. That dress. I'd stayed up 3 nights in a row to make it, after she'd come home crying because the one she wanted cost $400. I remembered pricking my fingers countless times, the tiny blood spots I'd carefully washed away before giving it to her. She'd been so happy then, twirling in front of the mirror, calling me the best mom in the world. When had that girl vanished? When had money become her only measure of worth? I closed the album, a plan forming in my mind. It was time for Rebecca to learn the truth, a truth I'd kept hidden for years. Most people in our small town thought I was just Margaret Winters, a hardworking widow who cleaned houses and lived modestly. They pitied me, especially after my husband Frank died 12 years ago. Even Rebecca thought I was barely scraping by. That's exactly what I'd wanted them to think. What they didn't know was that Frank had left me with a small life insurance policy. Instead of spending it, I'd invested carefully. Then there was the inheritance from my Aunt Eliza, not much, but enough to buy a few good stocks back when no one believed in a little company called Apple. Over decades, I'd built something substantial, all while living in the same humble house, wearing the same modest clothes, driving the same aging car. I walked to my bedroom and pushed aside the loose floorboard under my bed. Inside was a key to a safe deposit box at First National Bank. Tomorrow, I would show my daughter exactly who I was. The next morning, I dressed with special care. Not in anything fancy. I wouldn't change who I appeared to be just yet. I wore my usual faded jeans and a clean but well-worn blouse. My gray hair remained in its simple bun. To anyone who saw me walking into the imposing glass building of Harrington and Blake Financial Services, I still looked like a cleaning lady who'd taken a wrong turn. The receptionist glanced up with a practiced smile that faltered when she saw me. "Can I help you?" "I have an appointment with Mr. Blake," I said quietly. Her perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. "Your name, please?" "Margaret Winters." I watched as she checked her computer, clearly expecting to find no such appointment. When she did, her smile became fixed, professional again, but with a hint of confusion. "Please take a seat, Mrs. Winters. Mr. Blake will be with you shortly." I sat in one of the plush leather chairs, ignoring the curious glances from well-dressed people passing through the lobby. 20 minutes later, Howard Blake himself came to greet me. "Margaret," he said warmly, taking my calloused hand in his manicured one. We'd known each other since high school, though few people would remember that now. "Come on back." In his spacious office overlooking the city, I got straight to the point. "I need to make a withdrawal, Howard. A significant one." He nodded, unsurprised. In the 30 years he'd been managing my money, I'd rarely touched the principal. "How much are we talking about, Margaret?" "I need a bank statement. A physical one, showing the full balance. And then I'd like to withdraw $50,000 in cash." Howard's eyebrows shot up. "That's unusual for you. Is everything all right?" I smiled thinly. "My daughter got married last weekend. I wasn't invited. Apparently, I'm too poor to attend." Understanding dawned on his face. Howard knew Rebecca. He'd watched her grow up from a distance, just as he'd watched my fortune grow. "I see," he said simply. "And you're ready to tell her the truth?" I nodded. It's time she learned who her mother really is. And who she isn't. 2 hours later, I left the building with a sealed envelope containing a bank statement with my name and the full balance, just over $8 million, and a briefcase with $50,000 in cash. The statement was for Rebecca. The cash was for something else entirely. Rebecca and Walter lived in a sprawling Tudor-style house in the most exclusive neighborhood in town. A house I'd never been invited to, though I'd driven by it many times, just a glimpse where my daughter lived. Today, I knew she wouldn't be home. Wednesday afternoons, she always had her executive team meeting at the advertising agency, where she was creative director. Walter, however, would be home. He worked remotely 3 days a week, something he'd mentioned smugly during one of our few encounters, as if to emphasize how important and flexible his position as a financial consultant was. I parked my 15-year-old Honda a block away and walked to their house, the envelope tucked securely in my purse. The front garden was immaculate, with carefully trimmed hedges and color-coordinated flower beds that screamed professional landscaper. Nothing like my own wild, overgrown garden that fed butterflies and hummingbirds. I rang the doorbell, hearing its elegant chime echo inside. Footsteps approached, and then Walter opened the door, his expression shifting from polite inquiry to poorly concealed dismay when he recognized me. "Margaret," he said, not quite managing to sound pleased. He never called me Mom or even Mrs. Winters. Just Margaret, as if I were the housekeeper. This is unexpected. Rebecca's not here. I know, I said calmly. I came to see you, actually. May I come in? Reluctance flashed across his handsome face, but social conditioning won out. He stepped aside, gesturing me into a foyer larger than my entire living room. Can I get you something? Water? Coffee, he offered, his tone suggesting he hoped I'd decline. No, thank you. This won't take long. He led me to a sitting room where everything was cream-colored and pristine. I perched on the edge of a sofa that probably cost more than my car, while Walter sat opposite me, checking his watch discreetly. I understand congratulations are in order, I began. Rebecca told me you got married last weekend. Walter had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Yes, well, it was a small affair. Just family and close friends. I see. And I'm not family? He shifted in his seat. That was Rebecca's decision. She felt, well, she thought it might be awkward for you. Different social circles, and all that. Because I'm poor, I said flatly. Walter didn't deny it. Instead, he spread his hands in a gesture that managed to be both apologetic and dismissive. Look, Margaret, you have to understand. My family has certain expectations. My father is on the board of 3 major companies. My mother chairs the Symphony Gala every year. The wedding was as much a networking event as a celebration. And Rebecca was fine with excluding her only living parent. I pressed. It was her idea, he said, a trace of defensiveness creeping into his voice. She said you'd understand. That you've always understood your different positions in society. I nodded slowly, digesting this final betrayal. Well, I came to leave her a wedding gift. I reached into my purse and pulled out the sealed envelope. Would you make sure she gets this? It's important. Relief washed over his face, clearly glad our conversation was ending. Of course. I'll put it on her desk right now. He took the envelope, and I rose to leave. At the door, I turned back to him. One more thing, Walter. Was it a beautiful wedding? His smile was genuine for the first time. It was perfect. Rebecca looked stunning. I'm sure she did, I said softly. Goodbye, Walter. As I walked back to my car, I felt oddly calm. The die was cast. By evening, Rebecca would know the truth, and nothing would ever be the same. I spent the afternoon at the cemetery where Frank was buried. I hadn't planned to go there, but somehow my car turned in that direction of its own accord. I needed to talk to him, even if he couldn't answer. His headstone was simple gray granite, nothing fancy. Frank would have hated anything ostentatious. I sat on the small bench I'd installed beside his grave and touched the cool stone. Our daughter got married, Frank, I said quietly. She didn't invite me. She thinks I'm poor, and she's ashamed of me. I laughed without humor. If she only knew, right? You always said we should tell her about the money, but I wanted her to learn the value of hard work. I wanted her to be grounded, not entitled. Where did I go wrong? The cemetery remained silent except for the rustle of leaves and distant birdsong. Frank had been gone 12 years now, taken by a sudden heart attack at 58. Sometimes I still reached for him in the night. I'm going to tell her everything now, I continued. She'll know about the money, and then I'll see who she really is. I paused, wiping away a tear. I'm afraid, Frank. Afraid that she'll only care about the money, not about me. Afraid that our little girl is gone forever. I sat there until the sun began to set, drawing strength from memories and the quiet dignity of this place. Then I drove home to wait. My phone rang at precisely 8:27 p.m. Rebecca's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering, my heart hammering against my ribs. Hello. I kept my voice neutral. Mom. Rebecca sounded breathless, disbelieving. Is this bank statement real? Yes, I said simply. But how? Where did all this money come from? Are you secretly some kind of criminal? Her voice rose with each question. I almost laughed. No, Rebecca. I invested your father's life insurance money. I inherited some from Anna Liza. I saved every penny I could. I made smart choices with good advice. Over 40 years, it adds up. But you live in that tiny house. You drive that ancient car. You wear clothes from Walmart. Yes, I agreed. Because things don't matter to me. People do. Or they used to. There was a long silence on the line. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, grown softer, warmer. The voice she used when she wanted something.
Mom,
I don't know what to say. I'm in shock. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have made a difference? I asked quietly. Would you have invited me to your wedding if you'd known I was rich instead of poor? She didn't answer directly. Mom, I'm so sorry about the wedding. It was a mistake. I was under so much pressure from Walter's family. You know how these society people are. No, I said. I don't know how these people are. I've never excluded someone I love because of their bank account. Please, Mom. Her voice cracked artfully. Can we talk about this in person? I feel terrible. I want to make it up to you. All right, I agreed. Come over tomorrow at noon. We'll talk. Actually, she said quickly, could we meet at our house? Walter feels awful too. We want to have you over for a proper lunch. To apologize. Of course they did. Now that they knew I had millions.
Fine, I said.
I'll see you tomorrow. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd received the news of my exclusion just days ago. Everything looked the same. The worn countertops, the humming old refrigerator, the faded curtains, but everything had changed. The phone rang again almost immediately. It was Walter this time. Margaret. I just heard the news. This is incredible. We had no idea. Clearly, I said dryly. Look, I feel just terrible about the wedding. What a misunderstanding. We should have insisted you be there. I don't know what we were thinking. Don't you? I asked. He barreled on, ignoring my question. Listen, about lunch tomorrow, Rebecca's making all your favorites. And I thought maybe afterward we could talk about your finances. As a financial professional, I'd be happy to look over your portfolio. Make sure you're getting the best returns. No charge, of course. Just family helping family. The predator had emerged, his teeth gleaming. That's very generous, I said, keeping my tone light. I'll see you both tomorrow. I hung up before he could say more, ball rising in my throat. That night, I received 17 phone calls and 23 text messages. Word had spread like wildfire. Rebecca must have told someone who told someone else, and suddenly everyone knew that plain old Margaret Winters was secretly a millionaire. My cousin Shirley, who hadn't spoken to me in 5 years, called to say she'd been thinking about me and wanted to reconnect. My neighbor Ted suddenly remembered he'd always wanted to start a food truck business and wondered if I might be interested in investing. Rebecca's childhood friend Melissa, now a real estate agent, texted to say she had the perfect luxury condo to show me. I turned off my phone and went to bed, but sleep eluded me. I kept thinking about the look on Rebecca's face when she opened that envelope. Had she been shocked? Embarrassed? Or simply calculating how quickly she could get her hands on my money? Tomorrow would reveal the truth. But I was no longer the naive mother who'd called her daughter with excitement just days ago. I had a plan of my own now. Walter and Rebecca's house looked even more impressive in the bright noon sunlight. As I walked up the curved driveway, I noticed Walter watching from an upstairs window. By the time I rang the doorbell, both of them were waiting in the foyer, smiles fixed on their faces. Rebecca rushed forward to embrace me, something she hadn't done in years.
Mom.
You look wonderful. I accepted her hug without returning it, noticing how she dressed down for the occasion in what she probably thought were regular people clothes, designer jeans that still had their perfect crease, and a cashmere sweater that likely cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Walter shook my hand with newfound enthusiasm. Margaret. So good to see you. Come in, come in. They ushered me into their formal dining room, where the table was set with fine china and crystal glasses. A catered lunch, I could tell from the professional arrangement, waited on silver serving trays. I hope you're hungry, Rebecca said brightly. We have all your favorites. It was telling that nothing on the table was actually my favorite. She'd ordered what she thought impressive: lobster salad, truffle risotto, and champagne. I preferred simple roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and a good cup of tea. But she wouldn't know that. We hadn't shared a real meal in years. As we ate, they both worked hard to charm me. Rebecca suddenly remembered childhood anecdotes she'd never mentioned before. Walter asked detailed questions about my life, my interests, my opinions, all things he'd never cared about previously. "Mom," Rebecca said finally, setting down her champagne flute, "I can't tell you how sorry I am about the wedding. It was a terrible mistake." "Yes," I agreed mildly.
It was.
"You have to understand," she continued, leaning forward earnestly, "Walter's family can be very traditional. They had certain expectations." "Traditional people usually value mothers," I pointed out. Walter jumped in smoothly. "What Rebecca means is that we were under a lot of pressure. Her job was on the line, her boss is friends with my father, and we needed everything to be perfect. We made a bad decision in the moment." "I see," I said, though I didn't. No pressure in the world would have made me exclude my child from my wedding. "But now," Rebecca said, brightening, "we can make it up to you. We're thinking of having a big reception, a second celebration. You'll be the guest of honor. We'll introduce you to everyone." Her eyes sparkled with plans that I suspected had more to do with showing off her newly discovered wealthy mother than making amends. "That's very thoughtful," I said noncommittally. Walter cleared his throat. "Also, Margaret, I've been thinking about your financial situation. $8 million is impressive, but with the right management, we could grow that significantly. I have some contacts in private equity who—" "My money is very well managed. Thank you," I interrupted. "Howard Blake has been handling it for 30 years. Rebecca's eyes widened. "Howard Blake? From Harrington and Blake? He's one of the most exclusive financial advisors in the state. Even Walter can't get an appointment with him." "We were in high school together," I said simply. An awkward silence fell. I could almost see the recalculation happening behind their eyes. I wasn't just a woman with money. I was a woman with connections they hadn't suspected. "Mom," Rebecca said finally, her voice dropping to a confidential tone, "there's something else we wanted to talk to you about." She glanced at Walter, who nodded encouragingly. "The thing is, we're in a bit of a situation." "What kind of situation?" I asked, though I already knew. "Well, the wedding was beautiful, but expensive. Walter's parents promised to help, but they're having some cash flow issues with their latest real estate development. And my job, there have been some cutbacks, and my bonus isn't what we expected." Walter took over smoothly. "What Rebecca's trying to say is that we've overextended ourselves a bit. Nothing serious, just a temporary cash crunch. We have some payments coming due, and we thought, now that we know about your situation, maybe you could help us out."
"Just a small loan."
"We'd pay you back, of course." "How much?" I asked, keeping my face neutral. They exchanged glances. "200,000 would get us completely clear," Walter said. "But even 50 or 100 would help enormously." I took a sip of water, letting them wait. "And if I hadn't discovered your secret millions?" Rebecca asked, a hint of her old sharpness returning. "What would you have done then?" Walter's smile tightened. "We would have managed. We always do." "By cutting out people who can't help you?" I suggested. Rebecca flushed. "That's not fair, Mom. I made one mistake."
"One."
"And I've apologized. Isn't that enough?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. The entitled tilt of her chin, the calculating gleam in her eyes, so like her father's, but without his kindness. The expensive highlights in her hair, the subtle cosmetic work around her eyes that made her look perpetually refreshed. This polished, perfect woman was my child, but a stranger to me now. "I'll think about it," I said finally, rising from the table. "Thank you for lunch." Their faces fell in unison. This wasn't how they'd expected the conversation to go. "Mom, please," Rebecca said, following me to the door. "We really need your help. The bank is threatening to call on our loan." I turned to face them both. I said I'll think about it. I'll let you know my decision tomorrow. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror. They stood in their doorway, Walter with his arm around Rebecca's shoulders, both watching me leave with identical expressions of thwarted expectation. They thought they knew what would happen next. They thought they had me figured out. They were wrong. Back home, I pulled out the briefcase with $50,000 that I'd withdrawn the day before. It wasn't meant for Rebecca and Walter. It was for something else entirely, a plan I'd been considering for years, but had never had the courage to implement. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd saved long ago but never called. Sullivan and Partners, how may I direct your call? A professional voice answered. Patricia Sullivan, please. Tell her it's Margaret Winters. There was a pause then. 1 moment, Mrs. Winters. 30 seconds later, Patricia's warm voice came on the line. Margaret, it's been too long. Howard told me you might be calling. Patricia Sullivan was one of the state's most respected attorneys, specializing in estate planning and charitable foundations. She was also Howard's wife and another old friend from high school. I'm ready, Patty, I said. I want to set up the foundation we talked about.
Wonderful, she replied.
Can you come in tomorrow morning at 10? We'll get everything started. I'll be there, I promised. After hanging up, I felt lighter than I had in days. The foundation had been a dream of mine for years, a way to help single mothers and struggling families, people who reminded me of myself before Frank's insurance policy and good investments had changed my financial situation. People who had been written off by society, just as my daughter had written me off. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rebecca had rejected me for being poor, only to discover I was rich. And now, I would use that wealth to help the very people she despised, those who wore rags like mine. My phone buzzed with another text from Rebecca. Mom, please call me back.
We really need to talk about this.
Walter's parents are asking questions about our finances. We need your help. I set the phone down without replying. Tomorrow would come soon enough, and with it, the revelation that would change everything between us forever. Little did I know that what awaited wasn't just a confrontation with my daughter, but the beginning of a war that would expose secrets I'd kept buried for decades, secrets that even I had forgotten existed. That night, as a storm gathered on the horizon, I sat by my window watching lightning flash across the darkened sky. Each brilliant streak illuminated a world transformed, just as the truth about my wealth had transformed Rebecca's perception of me. But lightning was dangerous, unpredictable. So was truth. And I was about to unleash both. The doorbell rang unexpectedly, startling me from my thoughts. It was nearly midnight. Who would be at my door at this hour? I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. What I saw made my blood run cold. Walter stood on my porch, alone, rain dripping from his expensive overcoat. His face, usually so controlled, was twisted with something that looked dangerously like desperation. And in his hand was something that gleamed metallic in the porch light. I stepped back from the door, my heart pounding. The game had changed, and suddenly, the stakes were much higher than I'd ever imagined. I stood frozen behind my front door, watching Walter's shadow through the peephole. The metallic object in his hand caught the porch light again. Was it a gun? Had my rejection of their financial plea pushed him to something unthinkable? The doorbell rang a second time, more insistent now. I reached for my phone, ready to call 911, when Walter shifted his position. That's when I saw what he was holding, not a gun, but a flask. He took a quick swig, then pounded on the door. Margaret, I know you're in there. We need to talk. His words slurred slightly. He was drunk, which might be less immediately dangerous than armed, but drunk men were unpredictable. I'd learned that lesson decades ago, long before Rebecca was born. Go home, Walter. I called through the door. It's midnight. We can talk tomorrow. No, now, he insisted, leaning heavily against the door frame. Rebecca doesn't know I'm here. This is between you and me. Something in his tone, desperate but determined, made me curious despite my better judgment. I kept the chain lock engaged but opened the door a crack. You have 5 minutes, I said. Talk from there. Walter looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was plastered to his forehead from the rain. His expensive coat was buttoned wrongly, and his eyes were bloodshot. He took another swig from his flask before speaking. You don't understand what you're doing, he said, his voice low and urgent. We're not just in a little financial trouble. We're drowning. That's not my problem, I replied coldly. It will be when your daughter goes to prison, he hissed. That got my attention. What are you talking about? Walter glanced nervously over his shoulder at the empty street before continuing. The wedding wasn't just expensive. It was funded inappropriately. Rebecca took money from her advertising agency's client accounts. She was going to put it back with her bonus, but then the company announced cutbacks. My blood ran cold. Are you saying my daughter embezzled money? She prefers to call it temporary reallocation of funds, Walter said with a bitter laugh. But yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Nearly $300,000. The audit is next week. If she can't replace it by then, they'll discover the discrepancy. I struggled to process this information. My Rebecca, a thief? Was Walter telling the truth? Or was this just another manipulation? Why are you telling me this? Why not let her explain the situation herself? Walter took another drink, grimacing as the liquor burned his throat. Because she's too proud to tell you the whole truth. She'd rather go to prison than admit how badly she screwed up. He leaned closer. But I'm not going down with her. My career would be over if I'm connected to financial fraud. So, you're throwing your wife under the bus to save yourself? I asked, disgust rising in my throat. I'm trying to save us both, he snapped. She stole the money, but I knew about it. That makes me an accessory. The only way out is for you to help us. Loan us the money to replace what she took, and this all goes away. I studied his face through the narrow opening. There was fear there, genuine fear. But something else too, calculation. Even drunk and desperate, Walter was playing an angle. If what you're saying is true, why did Rebecca take such a risk? Your families are both well off. Walter's laugh was hollow. That's what everyone thinks. The truth? Her agency has been struggling for years. She's been demoted twice, but tells everyone she's still creative director. My parents lost almost everything in a bad investment 3 years ago. They're living on credit and reputation. The house we're in? We can barely make the payments. The cars, the clothes, the country club membership. It's all a facade. So, the wedding was our last attempt to keep up appearances, he finished. My parents insisted on inviting their high society friends, hoping to make connections that might save their business. Rebecca saw it as a networking opportunity to rebuild her career. Neither of them could afford it, but both were too proud to scale back. And neither of you thought to invite the mother of the bride, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Walter had the grace to look ashamed. That was Rebecca's decision. She said you'd make everyone uncomfortable, that you wouldn't fit in. I didn't fight her on it because, frankly, I was more worried about impressing potential clients than about family politics. And now you want me to bail you out. Not me, he insisted. Rebecca, your daughter. Whatever you think of me, she doesn't deserve prison. 300,000 is nothing to you now, but it would save her life. I closed the door slightly, needing a moment to think. Could I believe him? The story was outrageous, but it had the ring of truth. It explained their desperate reaction to discovering my wealth, their immediate request for money. Go home, Walter, I said finally. Tell Rebecca to come see me tomorrow. Alone. If what you've told me is true, I need to hear it from her. Relief washed over his face. Thank you, Margaret. You won't regret this. I haven't agreed to anything yet, I reminded him. Now go, before you wake the neighbors. He stumbled back to his car, a luxury sedan that suddenly seemed like just another prop in their elaborate charade. I watched until his taillights disappeared around the corner, then closed and locked my door, my mind racing. If Walter was telling the truth, my daughter wasn't just shallow and materialistic, she was a criminal. And I had a decision to make that would change both our lives forever. I barely slept that night. Rain lashed against my windows as I paced the worn carpet of my living room, weighing my options. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I called Patricia Sullivan and pushed our meeting back to the afternoon. Then I waited for Rebecca to arrive. She showed up at 9:30, looking considerably more composed than her husband had the night before. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, her designer outfit immaculate. Only the tightness around her eyes betrayed her anxiety. "Mom," she said as I opened the door. "Thank you for seeing me." I gestured her inside, without a word. We sat in my modest living room, the contrast between her polished appearance and my simple furnishings more striking than ever. "Walter told me he came to see you last night," she began, smoothing her skirt nervously. "He was drunk. I hope he didn't upset you." "He told me some very disturbing things," I said, watching her face carefully. "About money missing from your company accounts." Her expression flickered, surprise, then anger, then resignation.
I was going to tell you about that today.
He had no right to go behind my back. "So it's true?" I pressed. "You stole from your clients?" Rebecca flinched at the word stole but didn't deny it. "I borrowed funds temporarily. I was going to replace everything with my year-end bonus. Then the company announced cutbacks, and my bonus was the first thing they eliminated." "Why would you take such a risk? For a wedding?" She looked down at her manicured hands. "It wasn't just the wedding. We've been struggling for years, Mom. My career isn't what I've led people to believe. Walter's family fortunes collapsed a while ago. We've been keeping up appearances, hoping for a break. The wedding was supposed to be our chance to network, to make connections that could turn things around. And you couldn't invite your mother because she was too poor to be useful," I concluded. Tears welled in her eyes. I was wrong. So wrong. About everything. I've become someone I don't recognize anymore, someone who measures people by their bank accounts and social status. She reached for my hand. "But I can change. I want to change. Just help me out of this mess, and I promise things will be different between us." Her plea sounded sincere, but I'd heard promises like this before, from her father in the early years of our marriage, when his drinking had threatened to tear us apart. He'd changed eventually, but only after hitting rock bottom. I wondered if Rebecca needed the same harsh lesson. "The audit is next week?" I asked. She nodded. "Tuesday morning. If the money isn't back in the accounts by then, they'll find the discrepancies. They'll press charges. Mom, I could go to prison." $300,000, I mused. "That's a lot of money, Rebecca." "I know it seems that way."
No, interrupta.
"It is a lot of money. Not because of the amount, but because of what it represents. It represents your choice to commit a crime rather than admit you couldn't afford the lifestyle you wanted. It represents valuing appearance over integrity." She bowed her head. "You're right. I've made terrible choices. And now you want me to help you avoid the consequences." "Yes," she whispered. "Please, Mom. I'm begging you." I rose and walked to the window, looking out at my small, neat garden where spring flowers were pushing through the soil. New beginnings.
Seconde chance.
"I'll help you," I said finally. "But there are conditions." Relief flooded her face. "Anything. Name it. First, you'll pay me back every penny with interest. I'm not giving you this money, I'm lending it." She nodded eagerly. "Of course. Absolutely." "Second, you'll commit to therapy, real therapy, not those life coaching sessions you mentioned once. You need to understand why you've made these choices." Her enthusiasm dimmed slightly, but she agreed. "Third," I continued, "you'll volunteer at the women's shelter downtown. 4 hours every week, for a year. No excuses, no exceptions." "The women's shelter?" She looked confused. "Why?" "Because you need to remember what real struggle looks like. Those women have lost everything, their homes, their security, sometimes their children. Yet many of them have more dignity and integrity than people with millions in the bank." She swallowed hard but nodded. "Okay, I'll do it." "And finally," I said, returning to my seat across from her, "you need to understand that this is your last chance with me. If you ever lie to me again, if you ever exclude me from an important event in your life because you're ashamed of me, our relationship is over. Permanently." Her eyes widened. "You wouldn't cut me off completely, wouldn't I?" I asked quietly. "You did it to me, without a second thought. Why would you expect more mercy than you've shown?" She had no answer for that. "I'll transfer the money today," I said. $300,000. Not a penny more. You and Walter will need to figure out your other financial problems on your own. Thank you, Mom, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't deserve your help. No, I agreed. You don't, but you're still my daughter, and I still love you. That hasn't changed, even if everything else has. She rose to embrace me, but I stepped back. We have a long way to go before we're back to hugs and family dinners, Rebecca. Actions matter more than words now. She nodded, wiping away her tears. I understand. I'll prove myself to you, I promise. As she left, I wondered if she could keep that promise, or if the lure of status and appearance would prove too strong once this crisis had passed. I had my doubts, but I also had a plan. At 2 o'clock, I sat in Patricia Sullivan's elegant office, finalizing the details of my new foundation. The Margaret Winters Family Support Foundation would provide assistance to single parents, struggling families, and women leaving abusive relationships. It would offer financial education, housing support, and educational scholarships. This is wonderful work, Margaret, Patricia said, reviewing the documents. I've included the provisions you requested. The foundation will be funded immediately with $5 million from your accounts, with an additional $2 million to be added upon your death. And the board of directors? I asked. As you specified, yourself as chairperson, Howard as treasurer, myself as legal counsel, and 2 seats reserved for community members who have benefited from the foundation services. She hesitated. You're sure you don't want to include Rebecca? I'm sure, I said firmly. At least for now. That may change in the future, depending on her choices. Patricia nodded, understanding in her eyes. She'd known me long enough to guess at the complicated relationship I had with my daughter. There's one more thing, I added. I want to change my will. Of course, she said, pulling out a fresh legal pad. What changes did you have in mind? Rebecca will still inherit, but with conditions. I'm setting up a trust that will provide her with a modest income, enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly. The bulk of my remaining estate will go to the foundation, with one exception. I pulled a sealed envelope from my purse and handed it to Patricia. Inside is a name. I want $1 million to go to this person upon my death, with a letter I'll prepare. Patricia looked surprised, but didn't open the envelope. May I ask who it is? Someone from my past, I said softly. Someone I've never told Rebecca about. Someone who deserves this money more than she does. She nodded, placing the envelope in her desk drawer. I'll make sure it's handled exactly as you wish. As I left her office, I felt lighter somehow, as if I'd set down a burden I'd been carrying for decades. The secrets of my past, and the mistakes I'd made, would remain hidden for now. But someday, the truth would come to light. And when it did, I wanted to make amends the only way I knew how. A week passed. I transferred the money to Rebecca, as promised. She texted to confirm she'd replaced the missing funds in her company's accounts and that the audit had found nothing amiss. Crisis averted. I expected to feel relief, but instead, I felt a strange emptiness. I'd solved her immediate problem, but had I helped her in the long run? Or had I just enabled her once again? My doorbell rang on Saturday afternoon. I opened it to find Walter standing there, sober this time, and bearing an enormous bouquet of flowers. Margaret, he said warmly, may I come in? Rebecca sent these as a thank you. I accepted the flowers, but blocked his entry. Thank you, but I'm actually on my way out. Disappointment flashed across his face.
Oh.
Well, perhaps another time? Rebecca, and I would love to have you over for dinner next weekend, to properly express our gratitude. I'll check my calendar, I said noncommittally. Walter leaned against the doorframe, lowering his voice conspiratorially. Look, I know things have been strained, but we're family, and families should stick together, especially when they have the resources to help each other. There it was, the real reason for his visit. Not gratitude, but another attempt to access my money. Is there something specific you need, Walter? I asked bluntly. He straightened, adjusting his tie. Well, since you ask, I've been looking into some investment opportunities. Very exclusive, very high return. Minimum buy-in is substantial, but with your resources, it would be perfect for you. And I could manage it all, of course. How generous of you, I said dryly. But my investments are quite satisfactory as they are. His smile tightened. Of course. Just thought I'd mention it. After all, we're family now. Speaking of family, I said, how are Rebecca's therapy sessions going? And her volunteer work at the shelter? Walter blinked. Oh, she's been busy with work, but she's planning to start all that soon. Very soon. Just as I suspected. The promises were already being broken. Please remind her that those were conditions of my help, I said. Not suggestions. Absolutely, he agreed quickly. I'll make sure she prioritizes those commitments. As he turned to leave, he paused. By the way, we're hosting a dinner party next month. Some very influential people will be there. It would mean a lot to Rebecca if you'd attend. Now that they knew I was wealthy, they were eager to show me off. How convenient. I'll think about it, I said, closing the door before he could press further. I placed the flowers in water, noticing there was no card attached. Had Rebecca really sent them, or had that been Walter's invention? I was beginning to wonder how much of their relationship was based on mutual deception, of others, and perhaps of each other. The next morning, I drove to the women's shelter where Rebecca was supposed to be volunteering. I wanted to see for myself if she was keeping at least that promise. The shelter was housed in a former elementary school, its brick exterior weathered but well-maintained. Inside, the hallways had been transformed into welcoming spaces with comfortable seating areas and children's play corners. A woman in her 60s greeted me at the reception desk. Her name tag identified her as Dolores.
Good morning, I said.
I'm wondering if my daughter has started volunteering here yet? Rebecca Harrington. Dolores checked a clipboard. Harrington, no, I don't see that name on our volunteer roster. Is she scheduled to start soon? She was supposed to begin last week, I said, disappointment settling like a stone in my stomach. Well, we're always looking for help, Dolores said cheerfully. Would you like to volunteer yourself? We could use someone at the front desk on Thursdays. I was about to decline when something stopped me. Why not? My days were often empty since I'd retired from cleaning houses 2 years ago. And unlike my daughter, I understood the value of keeping promises. I'd like that, I said, surprising myself. Thursdays would be perfect. Dolores beamed and handed me a form to fill out. As I wrote down my information, she chatted about the shelter's work. We serve about 30 women and their children at any given time, she explained. Many are escaping domestic violence. Others have lost jobs or homes. We provide temporary housing, counseling, job placement assistance, and childcare. It sounds like important work, I said, genuinely impressed. It is. And it's personal for many of us volunteers. I was a resident here myself, 27 years ago. Fled an abusive husband with 2 small children and nowhere to go. This place saved my life. I looked up, struck by her candor. And now you help others. She nodded. It's how I give back. How I make meaning from my pain. She studied me curiously. What brings you to volunteer with us? If you don't mind my asking. I considered how to answer. Let's just say I understand what it means to struggle. To feel invisible. To be judged for what you don't have rather than who you are. Something in my tone must have resonated with her, because she reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. Then you'll fit right in here, Margaret. As I drove home, I realized I felt better than I had in weeks. While Rebecca was breaking her promises, I had found an unexpected purpose, one that connected to my foundation's mission in a personal way. Maybe it was time to stop focusing on my daughter's failings and start rebuilding my own life instead. The next few weeks settled into a new pattern. I volunteered at the shelter on Thursdays, joined a book club at the library on Mondays, and spent time with Howard and Patricia Blake, rekindling our old friendship. I barely heard from Rebecca, aside from occasional texts that felt obligatory rather than genuine. Then, on a Tuesday evening in early May, my phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Hello. I answered cautiously. Mrs. Winters? A female voice asked. This is Jennifer Wyatt. I'm the Human Resources Director at Apex Advertising. My pulse quickened. That was Rebecca's company. Yes, I prompted. I'm trying to reach Rebecca Harrington, but her phone appears to be turned off. You're listed as her emergency contact. Is she with you, by any chance? No, I said, alarm growing. I haven't seen her in several weeks. Is something wrong? The woman hesitated. I'm not at liberty to discuss company matters with family members, but it's important that I speak with her as soon as possible. If you do hear from her, please ask her to call me immediately. After hanging up, I tried Rebecca's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I called Walter next, but got no answer there either. Finally, I tried their home number, which rang several times before being answered by a woman who wasn't Rebecca. Harrington residence, she said crisply. This is Margaret Winters, Rebecca's mother. Who am I speaking with?
Oh,
Mrs. Winters. This is Elaine, the housekeeper. Mr. and Mrs. Harrington aren't available at the moment. Do you know where they are? It's important that I reach them. Elaine lowered her voice. They left 3 days ago, ma'am. Packed several suitcases and said they'd be gone for a while. They didn't say where they were going or when they'd be back. A cold feeling spread through my chest. I see. Thank you, Elaine. I hung up and sat perfectly still, processing this information. Rebecca and Walter had disappeared. Her company was looking for her urgently. Something was very wrong. My phone rang again. Howard Blake this time. Margaret, he said without preamble. Have you spoken to Rebecca recently?
no, y raplia.
I just learned she and Walter have left town. What's going on, Howard? He sighed heavily. I just got a call from the fraud department at First National Bank. Someone attempted to access your accounts this morning. They had your account numbers, social security number, and enough personal information to almost convince the bank they were authorized to make transfers on your behalf. My blood ran cold. Was it Rebecca? The bank wouldn't say, but they've frozen your accounts temporarily as a precaution. You'll need to come in tomorrow to verify everything and change your passwords and security questions. How much were they trying to transfer? I asked, dreading the answer. All of it, Margaret. Every penny you have. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My own daughter had tried to steal my entire fortune after I'd already saved her from prosecution for embezzlement. Had she learned nothing? Or had she simply learned that crime paid, as long as someone was willing to bail her out? There's more, Howard said grimly. The foundation account was also targeted. If they'd succeeded, they would have wiped out both your personal wealth and the charitable foundation. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. What happens now? The bank has reported the attempt to the police. They'll want to speak with you. And... He hesitated. And what, Howard? And if it was Rebecca, as we suspect, she could face serious charges. Identity theft, attempted bank fraud. These are federal crimes, Margaret. I thought of the frightened women at the shelter, many fleeing abuse and injustice. I thought of my own life, the sacrifices I'd made, the values I'd tried to instill in my daughter. And I thought of Rebecca, who had been given every advantage and still chose to take what wasn't hers. I understand, I said quietly. I'll cooperate fully with the investigation. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen as darkness fell, the house silent around me. My daughter, my only child, had tried to steal everything I had. And now she had fled, leaving me to deal with the aftermath. The doorbell rang, startling me from my thoughts. I approached cautiously, remembering Walter's drunken visit weeks earlier. Through the peephole, I saw 2 people in dark suits, a man and a woman, both with serious expressions. I opened the door slowly. Can I help you? They showed me badges identifying them as FBI agents. Mrs. Winters? The woman asked. I'm Special Agent Chen, and this is Special Agent Morales. We need to speak with you about your daughter, Rebecca Harrington. I stepped back to let them in, a sense of foreboding washing over me. Whatever Rebecca had done, it was clearly worse than I had imagined if the FBI was involved. Mrs. Winters, Agent Chen began once we were seated in my living room. When was the last time you had contact with your daughter? About 3 weeks ago, by text message. I haven't seen her in person since early April. They exchanged glances. Are you aware that your daughter and her husband have left the country? Agent Morales asked. My heart sank. Left the country? No, I had no idea. They boarded a private plane to the Cayman Islands 3 days ago, he continued. We have reason to believe they're attempting to flee prosecution. Prosecution for what, exactly? I asked, though I feared I already knew the answer. Agent Chen leaned forward. Mrs. Winters, your daughter and her husband are under investigation for a massive fraud scheme. Over the past 2 years, they've stolen approximately $12 million from various clients, investors, and financial institutions. The attempted access of your accounts appears to be their final play before disappearing permanently. $12 million. The number was staggering. This wasn't a one-time act of desperation for a wedding. This was a calculated, long-term criminal enterprise. We believe Walter Harrington was the mastermind, Agent Morales added, perhaps seeing the shock on my face. But Rebecca was a full participant. She used her position at the advertising agency to gain access to client accounts and her social connections to bring in wealthy investors for fake startups. I struggled to reconcile this information with the daughter I thought I knew. Had she always been capable of such deception? Had I been blind to her true nature all along? We need your help, Mrs. Winters, Agent Chen said. Any information you can provide about where they might go, who they might contact, could be crucial to bringing them to justice. Of course, I said automatically, but I'm afraid I don't know much about their plans or connections. Rebecca and we weren't close in recent years. We understand that you recently provided your daughter with a large sum of money, Agent Morales said, his tone carefully neutral. $300,000 transferred on April 18th. I felt a flush of embarrassment.
Yes.
She told me she needed it to replace funds she had borrowed from her company, to avoid an audit finding discrepancies. That was part of their exit strategy, Agent Chen explained. They were covering their tracks, making sure the immediate evidence of fraud was eliminated before they fled. And I helped them, I said bitterly. I gave them exactly what they wanted. You couldn't have known, Agent Morales said kindly. They were very sophisticated in their deceptions. Many people were fooled, including experienced financial professionals. But I should have known. I was her mother. I should have seen through the lies, recognized the manipulation for what it was. There's one more thing, Mrs. Winters, Agent Chen said, her expression grave. We have reason to believe your life may be in danger. My life? I repeated, confused. Why would they want to harm me? They already tried to take my money and failed. Because you're the only person who can testify about their confession to the earlier embezzlement, she explained. And because your will still names Rebecca as your primary beneficiary, correct? I nodded slowly, understanding dawning. If something happened to me, the conditions you placed on her inheritance might be challenged, Agent Morales finished. And the money you've pledged to your foundation could potentially be diverted to her instead. We'd like to place you under protective surveillance, Agent Chen continued. At least until we can locate and apprehend the Harringtons. I stared at them, trying to absorb this final, terrible revelation. My daughter and her husband hadn't just tried to steal from me. They might actually want me dead. Mrs. Winters? Agent Morales prompted gently. Are you all right? No, I wasn't all right. How could I be? The child I had raised, loved, sacrificed for. The child I had protected even after her cruel rejection, now posed a threat to my very existence. But I was not without resources of my own. I was not the helpless old woman they believed me to be. I'll cooperate with your protection, I said finally. But I want to do more than just hide and wait. I want to help you catch them. The agents exchanged surprised glances. What did you have in mind? Agent Chen asked cautiously. I know my daughter better than anyone, I said, determination replacing my shock. And I know exactly what will draw her out of hiding. I reached for a notepad and pen on my coffee table, a plan already forming in my mind. It was time to use Rebecca's greed against her, just as she had used my love against me. Here's what we're going to do. I began, writing rapidly. We're going to set a trap that she won't be able to resist. As the agents leaned forward to listen, a strange calm settled over me. The time for tears and regrets was over. Now it was time for justice, not just for me, but for everyone Rebecca and Walter had deceived and defrauded. And unknown to the FBI, I had an ace up my sleeve, a connection from my past that neither Rebecca nor Walter knew about. Someone who had every reason to help me now, after all these years of silence. The name in the sealed envelope I'd given to Patricia Sullivan. The secret that could change everything. And as I outlined my plan to the FBI agents, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The simple life I'd constructed so carefully was gone forever. In its place was a complex web of deception, danger, and determination. But I was Margaret Winters. I had survived poverty, loss, and betrayal. I would survive this too. And when the dust settled, Rebecca would learn the most important lesson of all, that some things were more valuable than money. Things like integrity, honesty, and the love of a mother she had so carelessly discarded. Unfortunately for her, that lesson would come from behind prison bars. Agent Chen's phone rang, interrupting our planning session. She stepped away to answer it, her expression changing as she listened. "When?" she asked sharply. "Are you certain?" When she returned to us, her face was grim. "Mrs. Winters, there's been a development. A body has been found in the Cayman Islands, washed up on a beach early this morning. Male, mid-30s. The local authorities believe it's Walter Harrington." My hand flew to my mouth. "Walter is dead?
How?
The preliminary report suggests drowning, but they're conducting a full investigation. There were irregularities." "What kind of irregularities?" I asked. Agent Morales cleared his throat. "Signs of a struggle. Possible foul play." "And Rebecca?" I whispered. "Has she been found?" Agent Chen shook her head.
No.
She's now considered both a potential suspect in her husband's death and a missing person potentially in danger herself. The implications crashed over me like a tidal wave. My son-in-law was dead. My daughter was missing, possibly a murderer, possibly in danger herself. And suddenly, the trap I had been planning to set seemed both more urgent and more dangerous than ever before. "We need to move quickly," I said, gathering my composure. If Rebecca killed Walter, she could be coming for me next. Or perhaps there was someone else involved, someone connected to their fraud scheme, someone they had double-crossed or threatened. Someone who knew the name in that sealed envelope. As the FBI agents made hurried phone calls to arrange for my protection, I slipped into my bedroom and retrieved a small key from inside a hollowed-out book on my nightstand. It opened a safe deposit box at a different bank, one that not even Howard Blake knew about. Inside that box was evidence I had kept for over 30 years. Evidence of a crime I had witnessed, but never reported. Evidence that could explain why Rebecca had grown into the person she had become. Because some secrets are genetic. Some tendencies are inherited. And some sins of the father are visited upon the children, even when those children never knew the father at all. Tomorrow, I would retrieve that evidence. Tomorrow, I would face a truth I had hidden from for decades. But tonight, as FBI agents set up surveillance outside my modest home, I sat in the dark and wondered, had I created the monster that Rebecca had become? Had my lies of omission, my secrets kept in the name of protection, somehow shaped her into a person capable of fraud, theft, and possibly murder? The thought kept me awake until dawn, when Agent Chen knocked on my bedroom door with news that would change everything once again. "Mrs. Winters," she said, her face ashen. "We've just received word from the Cayman Islands. There's been another body found." My heart stopped. "Rebecca?"
No, she said.
"A woman named Elizabeth Winters. According to her passport, she's your sister." But I had no sister. Not anymore. "I have no sister," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. There must be some mistake. Agent Chen's expression was carefully neutral. "The passport and identification found on the deceased woman say Elizabeth Winters, born 1965 in Cedar Ridge, same as your birthplace according to your records." I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. "Elizabeth." A name I hadn't spoken aloud in over 30 years. A ghost from my past that I'd buried so deeply, I'd almost convinced myself she never existed. Mrs. Winters? Agent Morales approached, concern evident in his voice. Perhaps you should sit down. I allowed him to guide me to the edge of my bed, my mind racing. Elizabeth dead. Walter dead. Rebecca missing. The carefully constructed walls of my life were crumbling around me, revealing secrets I'd spent a lifetime concealing. I need to make a phone call, I said suddenly. In private, please. The agents exchanged glances, but stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind them. With trembling fingers, I dialed Patricia Sullivan's number. Margaret, she answered groggily. It was not yet 6 a.m. What's happened? The envelope, I said without preamble. The one I gave you with a name inside. I need to know if you looked at it. Of course not, she said, sounding more alert now. It's still sealed in my safe. Client confidentiality is sacred to me. You know that. Relief washed over me. Thank you. Now I need you to do something else for me. Something completely confidential, even from Howard. Margaret, you're scaring me. Are you in trouble? Just listen carefully, I instructed, lowering my voice. I need you to go to First National Bank. There's a safe deposit box there under the name Margaret Smith. Box 247. The key is hidden in my house, inside the hollow leg of the nightstand next to my bed. Margaret Smith, she repeated, confusion evident in her voice. Who is? It was my name before I married Frank, I explained quickly. Before I became Margaret Winters. The FBI is at my house now. I can't access the box myself without raising questions I'm not ready to answer. But I need what's inside. There was a long pause. Is what you're asking me to do legal? Yes, I assured her. The box is legitimately mine. I just need you to retrieve the contents without anyone knowing, especially Rebecca, if she contacts you. Rebecca? Why would she? I can't explain now. I cut her off. Just promise me you'll do this.
Today.
And bring everything to me as soon as possible. Another pause. All right, Margaret. For you, I'll do it. But you owe me an explanation when this is over. You'll get one, I promised. And, Patricia, be careful. This may be more dangerous than you realize. I ended the call just as Agent Chin knocked lightly on the door. Mrs. Winters? We need to discuss next steps. I composed myself before opening the door. Of course. But first, I need to tell you something about Elizabeth Winters. They followed me to the kitchen, where I put on a pot of coffee with hands that still trembled slightly. Some conversations required caffeine, and this would be the hardest one I'd had in decades. Elizabeth was my younger sister. I began, my back to them as I measured coffee grounds. We had a falling out many years ago. I haven't seen or spoken to her since 1989. That's over 35 years, Agent Morales noted. Must have been quite a falling out. I turned to face them, my expression grim. She tried to steal my husband. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough for now. Enough to explain the estrangement without revealing the darker secrets that lay beneath. I'm sorry to hear that, Agent Chen said carefully. But we need to understand why she would be in the Cayman Islands at the same time as your daughter and son-in-law. Is it possible they were in contact? I shook my head. Rebecca doesn't even know Elizabeth exists. I never told her she had an aunt. Yet Elizabeth had identification identifying her as your sister, sharing your maiden name, Agent Morales pointed out. And she was found dead near where your son-in-law's body was discovered. That can't be coincidence. No, I agreed. It can't be. As the coffee percolated, filling the kitchen with its rich aroma, I made a decision. I couldn't tell these agents everything. Not yet, but I could give them enough to work with. After our falling out, Elizabeth moved away. I heard rumors over the years that she'd gotten involved with some unsavory people, that she might have connections to organized crime. I poured 3 cups of coffee, buying myself time to choose my words carefully. If she was in the Cayman Islands, it wasn't to reconnect with family. She was there for another reason. Agent Chen leaned forward. Do you think she could have been connected to your daughter and son-in-law's fraud scheme? Perhaps as a partner? Or a victim? The question hung in the air between us. I'd asked myself the same thing since hearing the news of her death. The timing was too perfect to be chance. It's possible, I admitted. But there's something else you should know. Something that might explain why all of this is happening now. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Last month, I established a foundation. The Margaret Winters Family Support Foundation. I funded it with $5 million from my accounts, with provisions for an additional $2 million upon my death. And your daughter knew about this? Agent Morales asked. Not specifically. She knew I had money, but not how I planned to use it. I hesitated. I also changed my will. Rebecca would still inherit, but most of my estate would go to the foundation. With one exception. Agent Chen's eyes narrowed. What exception? I designated $1 million to go to someone from my past. Someone Rebecca doesn't know about. Elizabeth. Agent Morales guessed. I neither confirmed nor denied it, but my silence was answer enough. Mrs. Winters, Agent Chen said, her voice taking on an edge of frustration, you need to be completely honest with us. If you're withholding information that could help us find your daughter or understand these deaths, you could be obstructing justice. I'm not obstructing anything, I replied, meeting her gaze. I'm trying to protect myself and others who might be in danger. The full truth is complicated, and parts of it aren't mine alone to tell. Whose truth is it then? Agent Morales pressed. Before I could answer, a phone rang. Agent Chen's secure line. She stepped away to take the call, her expression growing more serious with each passing moment. We need to move, she announced when she returned. That was headquarters. Rebecca Harrington's credit card was just used at a gas station 30 miles from here. She's back in the country, and she appears to be heading this way. My blood ran cold. She's coming here?
Now.
It seems that way, Agent Chen confirmed. We're arranging for additional agents, but in the meantime, we need to get you to a secure location. No, I said firmly, surprising even myself. I'm staying right here. Mrs. Winters, that's not advisable. Your daughter may be dangerous. Or she may be in danger herself, I interrupted. Either way, if she's coming here, I need to be here when she arrives. This has gone on long enough. It's time for the truth to come out. All of it. The agents exchanged concerned glances, but something in my expression must have convinced them of my resolve. We'll need to wire you, Agent Morales said finally. And we'll have agents surrounding the property. If she says anything incriminating, we'll need it on record. I nodded my agreement. Do what you need to do. But promise me one thing. Let me talk to her first, before you move in. There are things she needs to hear from me directly. As long as you're not in immediate danger, Agent Chen conceded. But at the first sign of threat, we intervene.
No exceptions.
Understood, I said. As they made arrangements, coordinating with their team outside, I moved to the window and looked out at my small, neat garden. Somewhere out there, my daughter was coming for me. Perhaps to threaten, perhaps to plead, perhaps to silence me forever. And I would be waiting for her, with 30 years of secrets ready to spill. The hours passed with excruciating slowness. I was wired with a discreet microphone, given instructions on what to say and not say, and then left alone in my living room while agents concealed themselves throughout the house and property. At 2:47 p.m., Patricia texted me, package retrieved.
Coming to you now.
I deleted the message immediately. Whatever was in that safe deposit box, I needed it before Rebecca arrived. Before the final confrontation that had been brewing for decades. At 3:15 p.m., a plain sedan pulled into my driveway. Patricia Sullivan, dressed in an inconspicuous gray pantsuit, stepped out carrying a leather briefcase. She was intercepted by agents before she reached my door. She's my attorney. I called from the doorway. Let her through. Inside, Patricia handed me the briefcase with questioning eyes. Margaret, there are FBI agents everywhere. What on earth is going on? I'll explain everything soon, I promised, taking the briefcase. Did you look inside? She shook her head. No, but... She lowered her voice. There was a gun in there. And photographs. Margaret, if you're involved in something illegal, I'm not, I assured her. But my daughter might be. Thank you for doing this. Now you should go, for your own safety. I'm not leaving you, she insisted. Whatever's happening, you need legal representation. Before I could argue, Agent Chin approached. Another car just turned onto your street. Silver BMW, rental plates. Could be her. Patricia's eyes widened. Rebecca? She's here. Stay back, I instructed both of them, moving toward the front window. Let me handle this. The BMW parked behind Patricia's sedan. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened, and Rebecca stepped out. She looked terrible, a far cry from the polished, perfect woman who had visited me weeks earlier. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes rumpled, her face pale and drawn. She glanced nervously up and down the street before approaching my door. I opened it before she could knock. "Hello, Rebecca," I said calmly. She flinched, clearly surprised by my appearance. "Mom." Her voice cracked on the word. "I need your help." "Come in," I said, stepping aside. She entered cautiously, her eyes darting around the room, taking in Patricia's presence with surprise. "What's she doing here?" "Patricia is my attorney," I explained. "And my friend. Something you would know if you'd paid attention to my life instead of just my bank account." Rebecca's face crumpled. "Mom, please. Walter is dead. They're saying I killed him, but I didn't. You have to believe me." "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the couch. "You look like you haven't slept in days." She sank onto the cushions, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. "I haven't. I've been running, hiding. They're after me, the people Walter owed money to, the people he stole from." "The FBI is looking for you too," I said evenly. Her head snapped up. "How do you know that?" "Because they're here right now," I told her. "This house is surrounded by federal agents, Rebecca. Whatever you say is being recorded." Panic flashed across her face. She jumped to her feet. "You set me up? Your own daughter?" "I'm trying to keep you alive," I countered. "If what you're saying is true, if you didn't kill Walter, then the FBI can protect you. But you need to tell the truth. All of it." She sank back down, defeat in every line of her body.
You don't understand.
"It's not that simple." "Then explain it to me," I urged, sitting across from her. "Start with Elizabeth Winters." Rebecca's brow furrowed.
Who?
"The woman found dead near Walter's body. My sister." "Your sister?" Rebecca looked genuinely confused. "You don't have a sister." "I did once," I said softly. "A long time ago. Her body was found in the Cayman Islands, Rebecca. The same place where Walter died. The same place you fled to. That can't be coincidence." Rebecca shook her head, bewilderment clear in her expression. "Mom, I swear I don't know what you're talking about. I never met anyone named Elizabeth. Walter never mentioned your sister." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. But all I saw was exhaustion and fear. "Tell me what happened," I said. "From the beginning. Why did you and Walter steal all that money? Why did you try to access my accounts? And what really happened in the Cayman Islands?" Rebecca took a shuddering breath. "It started small. Walter had some gambling debts. He convinced me to borrow from client accounts to help him pay them off. Just temporarily, he said." She laughed bitterly. "But temporary became permanent. The amounts got bigger. We needed more to cover what we'd already taken." "And the wedding?" I asked. "Was that part of the scheme too?" She nodded, shame coloring her cheeks. "We invited wealthy, potential marks. Walter used the connections to set up fake investment opportunities. I used my position at the agency to vouch for him, to make everything seem legitimate. And you excluded me because I was poor," I said flatly. "No," she whispered. "I excluded you because I was ashamed. I didn't want you to see what I'd become, what I was doing." That gave me pause. It was the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. "Go on," I prompted. "What happened next?" "When you showed me your bank statement, Walter saw an opportunity. A new mark. The biggest one yet. He pushed me to get close to you again. To gain your trust." Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't want to, Mom.
I swear.
But by then, we were in too deep. People were starting to ask questions. We needed a big score to disappear for good. So you tried to steal my entire fortune, I concluded. She nodded miserably. Walter arranged it all. He had connections, people who could hack accounts, create false identifications. But when it failed, when the bank froze your accounts, those same people turned on us. They wanted their cut, whether we succeeded or not. So you fled to the Cayman Islands. It was Walter's idea. He said he had money hidden there, enough for us to start over. But when we arrived, he started acting strange, secretive. He'd disappear for hours without explanation. Rebecca wrapped her arms around herself, as if warding off a chill. 3 nights ago, he came back to our hotel in a panic. Said we had to leave immediately. That's when he told me about the woman. Elizabeth, I said.
He didn't use a name.
He just said a woman was blackmailing him, that she knew things about his past, about our scheme. He was terrified of her. Rebecca looked up, her eyes haunted. The next morning, he went to meet her, to pay her off. He never came back. They found his body that afternoon. And you ran, I said. She nodded. I was afraid they'd think I killed him, or that whoever killed him would come for me next. I used the last of our emergency cash to buy a ticket home. I thought you were the only person who might help me. Even after you tried to steal from me? I asked incredulously. You're my mother, she said simply. Despite everything, I knew you still loved me. The room fell silent. From the corner of my eye, I could see Agent Chin watching intently, waiting for my signal to intervene. But I wasn't finished yet. Rebecca, I said carefully, did Walter ever mention someone named Thomas Gregory? Her eyes widened slightly.
Yes.
In the Caymans, right before he died. He said something about Thomas Gregory's money and how it was all connected. Who is he? Someone from my past, I said quietly. Someone I hoped you'd never have to know about. I opened the briefcase Patricia had brought me, removing a manila envelope from inside. From it, I extracted a faded photograph and handed it to Rebecca. This was taken in 1987, I explained. Before I met your father. Before you were born. Rebecca stared at the photo. It showed a younger version of me, standing between 2 people, Elizabeth, beautiful and wild-eyed, and a handsome man with dark hair and a dangerous smile. That's Elizabeth, I said, pointing. My younger sister. And that, I continued, indicating the man, is Thomas Gregory. Rebecca studied the photo. I don't understand. What does this have to do with Walter? Thomas Gregory was a criminal, I said bluntly. Money laundering, fraud, worse things. I didn't know that when I met him. I fell in love with his charm, his confidence, his seemingly endless supply of money. I took a deep breath. Elizabeth fell for him too. Understanding dawned in Rebecca's eyes. You both loved the same man.
Yes.
But when I discovered what he really was, what he really did, I left him. Elizabeth didn't. She stayed, became part of his organization. And when he went to prison in 1989, she disappeared with millions of his hidden assets. And this connects to Walter how? Rebecca pressed. Walter's real name isn't Harrington, I said quietly. It's Gregory. Thomas Gregory was his father. Rebecca's face went completely white.
What?
No, that's impossible. Walter's parents are the Harringtons. I've met them. They came to our wedding. Paid actors, Agent Chin said, stepping forward. We've confirmed that the people presenting themselves as Walter's parents are professional con artists with ties to Thomas Gregory's old organization. Walter changed his name when he was 18, I continued, probably to distance himself from his father's criminal legacy. But he followed in those footsteps anyway. Rebecca shook her head in disbelief. This can't be happening. You're saying my husband was the son of your ex-boyfriend? That's insane. It gets worse, I said grimly. Thomas Gregory was released from prison last year, after serving 30 years. One of the first things he did was establish contact with his son. How do you know that? Rebecca demanded. Because he contacted me too, I admitted. Warned me that Walter might try to find me, might try to take what he believed his father was owed. And you didn't think to warn me? Rebecca's voice rose in anger and disbelief. You let me marry him, knowing who he was? I didn't know you were dating Walter Gregory, I shot back. You kept him away from me, remember? By the time I saw him, by the time I recognized the resemblance to his father, you were already married, and I wasn't even invited to the wedding. Rebecca slumped back, the weight of these revelations crushing her. So Elizabeth was blackmailing Walter because she knew his real identity? Knew he was Thomas's son. That's my guess, I agreed. She probably recognized him, just as I did. The resemblance to his father is striking. But why would she be in the Cayman Islands? How would she know about Walter's scheme? Because, I said heavily, that's where Thomas Gregory hid his money 30 years ago. Money that Elizabeth helped him conceal. Money that she might have been helping Walter access. Agent Chun stepped forward. Mrs. Winters, if you have information about Thomas Gregory's whereabouts or his hidden assets, you need to share that with us now. I turned to face her. I've told you everything I know about Thomas. But there's one more piece to this puzzle. One more secret I've kept. I reached back into the briefcase and removed a sealed envelope, different from the one I'd given Patricia. This one was yellowed with age, the seal cracked and brittle. Rebecca, I said, my voice trembling slightly, there's something you need to know about your father. Dad, she looked confused. What does Frank have to do with any of this? Frank Winters was a wonderful man, I said softly. He loved you from the moment he met you. He raised you as his own. But he wasn't your biological father. The color drained from Rebecca's face. What are you saying? Frank and I married when you were 2 years old. He adopted you legally. We decided never to tell you, to protect you from the truth. The truth about what? Rebecca whispered, though I could see in her eyes that she already suspected the answer. I handed her the envelope. See for yourself. With shaking hands, she opened it, pulling out a birth certificate. Her birth certificate. Father's name, Thomas Gregory. No, she breathed. No, this can't be real. I'm afraid it is, I said gently. Thomas Gregory is your biological father, which means Walter was your half-brother. Rebecca made a choked sound, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. The birth certificate fluttered from her fingers to the floor. Did he know? She finally managed to ask. Did Walter know we were related when he married me? I don't think so, I said. Not at first. Thomas went to prison before you were born. He never knew I was pregnant. I changed my name, moved away, started a new life. But when Thomas was released, when he reconnected with Walter, he must have told him, Rebecca finished. And Walter kept it from me. Used me anyway. Married me anyway. She looked like she might be sick. That's monstrous. Yes, I agreed quietly. It is. So all of this, the fraud, the theft, trying to steal your money, it was what? Some twisted form of revenge against you? Against Thomas? I think it started that way, I said. But Walter was his father's son in more ways than one. Once he started down that criminal path, he couldn't stop. And when Elizabeth showed up in the Caymans, threatening to expose not just his crimes, but his true relationship to you, he killed her, Rebecca said flatly. And someone killed him in return. Agent Chin cleared her throat. Mrs. Harrington, at this point, I need to formally advise you of your rights. You're not under arrest, but given the circumstances. I understand, Rebecca interrupted. And I'll tell you everything I know. About Walter, about the fraud, all of it. But first, she turned back to me, I need to know one more thing. The money you set aside in your will, the $1 million for someone from your past. Was it for Thomas? I shook my head. No. It was for his other child. Your half-sibling. Rebecca stared at me. I have another sibling? Who? Before I could answer, the front window shattered. Glass exploded inward as agents shouted warnings. Patricia screamed. I lunged toward Rebecca, trying to push her down, to shield her from whatever was coming. Too late. A red appeared on her chest, a laser sight. Then another on mine. Down. Everyone down. Agent Morales yelled. But we were frozen in place, Rebecca and I, caught in the crosshairs of unseen snipers. Mother and daughter, united at last by the terrible truth and by the imminent threat of death. "I'm sorry," Rebecca whispered, her eyes locked on mine. "For everything." "I know," I said. "I am too." The front door burst open. A figure stood silhouetted against the afternoon light, holding what appeared to be a detonator. "Hello, Margaret," said a hauntingly familiar voice. "It's been a long time." Thomas Gregory stepped into my living room, looking older but still dangerously handsome, his dark eyes moving from me to Rebecca with possessive satisfaction. "My family," he said, smiling that charming, deadly smile I remembered so well. "Together at last." Agent Chen raised her weapon. "FBI, drop the detonator." "I wouldn't do that," Thomas advised calmly. "This house is wired with enough explosives to level the entire block. One wrong move, and none of us leaves here alive." He turned to me, his expression softening in a way that still, after all these years, made my heart skip a beat. "Did you miss me, Margaret? Did you ever tell our daughter about me? About us?" "I just did," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Right before you made your dramatic entrance." He laughed, the sound as rich and seductive as I remembered. "Always the pragmatist. It's what I loved about you." His gaze shifted to Rebecca. "She has your eyes. But my temperament, I think. My adaptability." "My criminal tendencies, you mean," Rebecca spat. "You're the reason I am what I am." "Nature and nurture, my dear," he said smoothly. "I provided the genetics. Your mother provided the example of deception. Living a double life, hiding her wealth, lying to everyone around her. We're not so different, the three of us." "What do you want, Thomas?" I asked, trying to keep him talking while the FBI agents positioned themselves. I could see Agent Morales edging toward the kitchen, trying to circle behind Thomas. "What I've always wanted," he replied. "My money, my family, my life back." He raised the detonator slightly. "And I'm prepared to take rather extreme measures to get it." "The money's gone," I told him. "Whatever Elizabeth and Walter were looking for in the Caymans, they didn't find it." "Oh, I know exactly where the money is," Thomas said with a cold smile. "It's in your accounts, Margaret. Has been for years." I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" "Elizabeth didn't steal my money when I went to prison," he explained. "You did. She helped you access it, move it, hide it. That's why you two had your famous falling out. Not over me, but over my millions." "That's not true," I protested, though my voice lacked conviction. "I earned my money through investments, through hard work, through laundering my initial capital," he finished. "Don't bother denying it. Elizabeth confirmed everything before Walter killed her." Rebecca looked at me, betrayal in her eyes.
Mom?
"Is this true?" Before I could answer, Thomas continued. "I sent Walter to find you both, Elizabeth and Margaret, to recover what was mine. I didn't know he'd end up marrying my daughter in the process." He laughed darkly. "That was an unexpected complication, one he paid for with his life." "You killed your own son?" Rebecca gasped. "He failed me," Thomas said simply. "And he crossed a line with you. Even I have standards." "Put down the detonator, Gregory," Agent Chen ordered, her gun trained on his chest. "This ends now." "On the contrary," he replied. "This is just beginning. Margaret is going to transfer all her funds, my funds, to the accounts I've prepared. Then my daughter and I will leave here to start the life we should have had 30 years ago." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Rebecca said, disgust evident in her voice. Thomas smiled indulgently. "You will, because if you don't, your mother dies. And if she doesn't transfer the money, everyone in this house dies." He gestured with the detonator. Simple choices, really. I looked at my daughter, this complicated, damaged woman who had betrayed me, who had been betrayed in turn. I saw fear in her eyes, but also a fierce determination that reminded me of myself at her age. And I made my decision. "All right, Thomas," I said quietly. "You win. I'll transfer the money." "Mom, no," Rebecca protested. It's just money, I told her. Your life is worth more. Thomas nodded approvingly, still putting family first. That's my Margaret. He pulled a phone from his pocket. Use this. The account details are already programmed in. As he extended the phone toward me, several things happened at once. Agent Morales, who had circled behind Thomas, lunged forward. Thomas spun, finger tightening on the detonator, and Rebecca threw herself at her biological father, knocking him off balance. The detonator fell from his hand, skittering across the floor. I dove for it, my aging body protesting the sudden movement. My fingers closed around the device, just as Thomas broke free from Rebecca's grasp. Stop, I shouted, holding up the detonator. Nobody move. Everyone froze. Thomas stared at me, genuine surprise in his dark eyes. He'd never expected me to fight back. That had always been his mistake. Margaret, he said carefully, think about what you're doing. I am thinking, I replied. For the first time in decades, I'm thinking clearly. I looked at Rebecca. Get behind the agents.
Now.
She hesitated, then moved toward Agent Chen, who pulled her behind the protective barrier of her body. This isn't you, Thomas said, his voice taking on that persuasive tone I remembered so well. You're not a killer. Neither are you, I countered. Not directly. You always get others to do your dirty work. Walter, Elizabeth, all those nameless criminals in your organization. We made a good team once, he reminded me. We could again. No, I said firmly. That part of my life is over. I'm not the same woman you knew. His expression hardened. The money is mine, Margaret. I earned it. Through theft and fraud and extortion, I replied. Just like our daughter and your son tried to do. The cycle ends here, Thomas. So what now? He asked, his eyes calculating. You turn me in? Go back to your ordinary little life? Pretend none of this ever happened? No, I said softly. I stop running from the truth. I stop hiding who I really am, what I've really done. For Rebecca's sake. For my own. I turned to Agent Chen. When you arrest him, you'll need to arrest me too. I did take his money. I did help launder it. I've been living off the proceeds of crime for 30 years. Mom, don't, Rebecca pleaded. It's time, sweetheart, I told her. Time for both of us to face the consequences of our choices. Thomas laughed bitterly. So noble. So self-sacrificing. You haven't changed at all, Margaret. Still trying to be the hero, even when you're just as guilty as the rest of us. The difference, I said, is that I'm ready to pay for what I've done. Are you? Something flickered in his eyes. Regret, perhaps, or just calculation. Then his hand moved swiftly to his jacket pocket. Gun, Agent Morales shouted. Thomas pulled out not a weapon, but a small remote device. Secondary detonator, he said with a cold smile. Always have a backup plan. His thumb hovered over the button. Agents raised their weapons. Rebecca screamed. And I realized that this moment, this terrible, desperate moment, was what my entire life had been leading toward. The final confrontation with the man who had given me both my greatest gift and my greatest curse, my daughter. I loved you once, I told him quietly. Part of me probably always will, but I won't let you hurt anyone else. His smile faltered. You won't pull that trigger. You don't have it in you. You're wrong, I said. I've spent 30 years protecting my child. I'm not going to stop now. Our eyes locked across the room. Dark and light, past and present, lies and truth. For a heartbeat, I saw the young man I had fallen for all those years ago. The man who might have been, in another life, a different kind of father to Rebecca. Then his thumb moved toward the button, and I pressed mine first. But instead of an explosion, there was only a soft click. Thomas's expression changed from triumph to confusion, then to dawning horror as Agent Morales tackled him from behind, driving him to the floor. The detonator's a dud, I explained as agents swarmed Thomas, securing his hands behind his back. Just like the explosives he claimed to have planted. Thomas always was more about threats than follow-through. How did you know? Rebecca asked, stunned. Because I know him, I said simply. Better than he knows himself. As the agents read Thomas his rights, he kept his eyes fixed on me. This isn't over, Margaret, he called as they dragged him toward the door. Not by a long shot. The truth always comes out in the end. Yes, I agreed, meeting his gaze one last time. It does. When he was gone, Rebecca collapsed onto the couch, her face in her hands. I can't believe any of this. My whole life has been a lie. I sat beside her, not touching her, respecting the chasm that still existed between us. Not all of it. Frank loved you genuinely. And so did I, in my way. Your way, she repeated bitterly. Keeping secrets. Living a double life. Teaching me through example that appearances matter more than truth. I was trying to protect you, I said softly. By lying? By pretending to be poor when you were rich? By hiding who my real father was? Yes, I admitted. Those were my choices, right or wrong. I thought I was giving you a normal life, away from Thomas's influence. Instead, you set me up to repeat your mistakes, she said. To value money over honesty. To hide my true self from the world. I couldn't deny the truth in her words. The patterns I had established, she had followed, taking them to extremes I had never imagined. I'm sorry, I said simply. For all of it. Agent Chin approached, her expression somber. Mrs. Winters, Rebecca, we need to take your formal statements now. And I'm afraid there will be charges. I understand, I said, rising wearily. But there's one more thing you should know. About Elizabeth. What about her? Agent Chin asked. She's not really dead, I said quietly. Rebecca's head snapped up. What? The woman in the Cayman Islands using Elizabeth's identification. That wasn't my sister. The real Elizabeth Winters died of cancer 3 years ago in Seattle. Under a different name. How do you know that? Agent Chin demanded. Because I was with her when she died, I said. We reconciled near the end. She told me everything about Thomas's money, about her role in hiding it. And she warned me that someday he would come looking for it. Then, who was the woman in the Caymans? Rebecca asked. I don't know, I admitted. But I suspect she was working with Thomas. Part of his scheme to flush me out, to force my hand. Agent Chin frowned. Why tell us this now? Because Thomas is right about one thing. This isn't over. The woman in the Caymans, the one using my sister's identity, whoever she is, she's part of something bigger. Something we haven't uncovered yet. As if to confirm my words, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. The game is just beginning, Margaret. You have something that belongs to me and I want it back. Your daughter's life depends on your next move. I showed the message to Agent Chin, whose expression darkened. We need to trace this. And we need to get you both to a secure location immediately. But as we were escorted from my house, the home I had lived in for 30 years, the sanctuary where I had hidden from my past, I knew that no location would truly be secure. Not from the forces Thomas had set in motion. Not from the secrets still waiting to be revealed. Because the most dangerous secret of all remained hidden, locked away in that safe deposit box Patricia had emptied for me. A secret even Thomas didn't know. The identity of his other child. Rebecca's half-sibling. The person for whom I had set aside that $1 million in my will. A person who might be the key to everything, or the architect of our destruction. As we drove away, Rebecca stared out the window, her profile achingly similar to her father's. Who is it? She asked suddenly. My half-sibling. You never answered. No, I agreed. I didn't. She turned to face me, her eyes searching mine. Is it someone I know? I hesitated, weighing truth against protection one last time. Then I made my choice. Yes, I said finally. It's someone you know very well. Her expression changed as understanding dawned. The funeral, she whispered. Last year. The person I saw you talking to, the one you said was an old friend. I nodded, unable to speak the name aloud. Not yet. Not until I was sure. Because if I was right, if my suspicions were correct, then the person behind it all, the puppet master pulling the strings from the shadows, wasn't Thomas Gregory at all. It was someone much closer to home. Someone whose betrayal would make Rebecca's pale in comparison. Someone who had been watching us all along, waiting for this moment. The car turned onto the highway, heading toward the FBI's safe house. Behind us, the life I had built crumbled into dust. Ahead, uncertainty and danger loomed. And somewhere, in the gathering darkness, a third Gregory child watched and waited, ready to claim their inheritance, in blood if necessary. The FBI's safe house was a nondescript ranch-style home on the outskirts of town, surrounded by tall privacy fences and monitored by discreet security cameras. Inside, it was functional but cold, bare walls, minimal furniture, nothing personal. Nothing like home. For 3 days, Rebecca and I existed in a strange limbo, giving statements, reviewing evidence, and avoiding the deeper conversation that hung between us. She slept in one bedroom, I in another. We ate meals together in silence, watched television without speaking, and waited for news about Thomas. He had been charged with multiple federal crimes: conspiracy, fraud, extortion, and making terrorist threats. But the investigation was ongoing, expanding to include Walter's murder, the mysterious woman found dead in the Caymans, and the sprawling financial crimes that had funded it all, including, potentially, my own. I had confessed everything to the FBI, how I had used Thomas's money to build my fortune, how I had hidden my wealth for decades, how I had lied to everyone, including my daughter. They were still determining what charges, if any, would be filed against me. On the 4th morning, as I sat at the kitchen table nursing a cup of weak coffee, Rebecca finally broke our silence. "Tell me about my half-sibling," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "I need to know everything." I studied her face, the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her jaw, the wariness that hadn't left her since we'd learned the truth about Walter. She looked both older and younger somehow, as if the revelations had simultaneously aged and stripped her. "Are you sure you want to know?" I asked. "Some truths can't be unheard." "I'm done with lies," she said firmly. "Especially yours." I nodded, accepting the rebuke. Thomas Gregory had 3 children that I know of.
You.
Walter. And one more. "Who?" she pressed. I took a deep breath. "Do you remember Elaine Burke?" Rebecca frowned. "Walter's secretary?" "The older woman who was always at his office." "She wasn't just his secretary," I said. "She was his handler, his connection to Thomas's organization." "She worked for my father?" Rebecca looked stunned. "All this time, she was reporting to him?" "Not just reporting," I clarified. "Directing. Guiding Walter's activities to serve Thomas's larger purposes." "How do you know this?" "Because," I said quietly, "Elaine Burke is Thomas Gregory's daughter. Your half-sister." Rebecca's coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. "That's impossible. She's in her 60s. 57, I corrected. Thomas was very young when she was born, just 17. Her mother was his high school girlfriend." Rebecca shook her head in disbelief. "So Walter's trusted assistant, the woman who practically ran his office, was actually his half-sister, working for their mutual father? And neither of them told me?" "Walter might not have known, at least not initially," I said. "Thomas compartmentalizes his operations. Need-to-know basis only." "But she knew who I was," Rebecca realized. Every time she smiled at me, every time she called me Mrs. Harrington, she knew I was her half-sister, that I was married to our brother. Disgust twisted her features. "That's sick." "Yes," I agreed. "It is. But that's how Thomas operates. He uses family ties as leverage, as tools for manipulation. Blood means nothing to him except as a means of control." Rebecca stared at me. "How long have you known about Elaine?" "I suspected for years," I admitted. "But I confirmed it only recently, when I saw her at that funeral you mentioned. She recognized me immediately, though we'd never formally met. The way she looked at me, I knew she had to be connected to Thomas." "And you said nothing," Rebecca said bitterly. "Just like you said nothing about Walter." "I didn't know for certain until it was too late." I defended myself. "And I didn't know she was working with Walter until all this happened. So the person you left money to in your will, this mystery beneficiary, it's Elaine? I nodded. $1 million, contingent on her severing ties with her father's organization. Why would you do that? Rebecca asked incredulously. Why reward her after what she's done? Because, I said softly, she's as much a victim of Thomas as you are. As Walter was. She was raised in that world. Never knew anything else. I thought maybe I could offer her a way out. Rebecca laughed bitterly. Always the savior. Even to people who don't deserve saving. Before I could respond, Agent Chen entered the kitchen, her expression grim. Mrs. Winters, Rebecca, we have a situation. What's happened? I asked, my pulse quickening. Thomas Gregory escaped federal custody 40 minutes ago. During transport between facilities, his vehicle was ambushed. 2 agents are dead. Rebecca gasped. He's free? How is that possible? It appears he had help, Agent Chen said, looking directly at me. Sophisticated help. Elaine, I whispered, the pieces falling into place. She orchestrated this. Agent Chen's eyes narrowed. Elaine Burke? Walter's secretary? How is she connected to this? I quickly explained what I'd just told Rebecca. About Elaine's true identity, her relationship to Thomas and Walter, her role in the organization. Why didn't you share this information sooner? Agent Chen demanded, her professional demeanor cracking to reveal genuine anger. I wasn't certain, I said. Not until now. We need to find her immediately, Agent Chen said, already reaching for her phone. And we need to move you both to a different location. If Thomas is free, this safe house is compromised. No, I said firmly. Both Rebecca and Agent Chen stared at me. What do you mean, no? Agent Chen asked. I mean, I'm done running. Done hiding. I stood up, a new resolve straightening my spine. Thomas wants me? Let him come. But this time, I choose the battlefield. Mom, that's insane, Rebecca protested. He'll kill you. No, he won't, I said confidently. Because I have something he wants even more than revenge. The money, Agent Chen guessed. Not just the money, I said. Proof. Evidence of his crimes going back 30 years. Information that could put him away for the rest of his life, or exonerate him, depending on how it's used. What kind of evidence? Agent Chen pressed. Documents. Recordings. Bank records. Things Elizabeth gave me before she died. Things I've collected over the years, just in case. I looked at Rebecca. I never stopped preparing for this day, even when I pretended it would never come. So, what's your plan? Rebecca asked. Use this evidence as bait? Lure Thomas into a trap. Something like that. I agreed. But we'll need help. And not just from the FBI. I turned to Agent Chen. I need to make a phone call. A private one. She hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. 5 minutes. But we're monitoring all communications in and out of this house. When she left, Rebecca looked at me suspiciously. Who are you calling? An old friend, I said, picking up the secure phone. Someone who knows Thomas even better than I do. I dialed a number I knew by heart, though I never used it. 3 rings, then a woman's voice answered. Cool, professional, wary. Hello, Elaine, I said. It's Margaret Winters. I think it's time we finally met. 24 hours later, I sat alone in my living room, waiting. The house had been swept for bugs, the broken window repaired, all signs of the previous confrontation erased. Outside, FBI agents were positioned strategically around the property, hidden from view, but ready to move on my signal. Rebecca was secured in a different location, a true safe house this time, one not even I knew the address of. She had fought against the separation, but eventually agreed when I explained what I had in mind. You can't trust Elaine, she had warned before leaving. She's his daughter, his loyal soldier. So were you once, I reminded her gently. People can change. But as the grandfather clock in my hallway chimed 9, marking the time of our arranged meeting, I wondered if I was making a terrible mistake. Trusting the daughter of the man who had deceived me, used me, and tried to destroy me. The doorbell rang precisely on the hour. Elaine Burke was nothing if not punctual. I opened the door to find a tall, elegant woman with silver-streaked dark hair and Thomas's unmistakable eyes. She wore an expensive charcoal suit and minimal jewelry, her only concession to vanity a pair of designer eyeglasses that framed her sharp features. "Mrs. Winters," she said formally. "Thank you for inviting me." "Please come in," I replied, matching her tone. "And call me Margaret." She entered cautiously, her gaze sweeping the room with professional assessment. "Are we alone?" "As alone as we can be, under the circumstances," I said, gesturing to the couch. "Would you like some tea?" "Let's dispense with the pleasantries," she said, remaining standing. "You said you had a proposition for me."
I'm listening.
"It concerns your father," I began. "And your half-sister." "Rebecca," she nodded. "Such a disappointment. So much potential. Wasted on petty schemes and a marriage that was unfortunate." "Did you know?" I asked bluntly. "When Walter married her, did you know they were siblings?" "Not at first," she admitted. "I knew Walter was my half-brother, of course. I'd been watching over him for years on our father's behalf. But I didn't make the connection to Rebecca until later. By then, it was too late to intervene without compromising our operation." "Your operation?" I repeated. "The one that resulted in Walter's death? In the murder of an innocent woman in the Cayman Islands?" Elaine's expression hardened. "That woman was hardly innocent. She was a federal informant, posing as your sister to infiltrate our organization. As for Walter," she sighed, "that was regrettable, but necessary. He became a liability." "And now Thomas is free," I said. "Thanks to you." She didn't deny it. "Our father has unfinished business." "With me." "With all of us," she corrected. "Family business." I studied her carefully. Despite her composed exterior, I could see tension in the set of her shoulders, a tightness around her eyes. She was nervous, though she hid it well. "You're afraid of him," I realized aloud. She flinched almost imperceptibly. "I respect him. There's a difference." "Not with Thomas, there isn't." I moved to the window, checking the street outside. Still quiet. "You've spent your entire life serving him, Elaine. Has he ever once put your needs above his own?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "That's why you're here," I continued. "Not just because of my call, but because you're looking for a way out. A way that doesn't end with you in prison, or worse." "You're very perceptive," she acknowledged reluctantly. "But what makes you think you can offer me that?" I reached into my pocket and withdrew a small USB drive. "This contains everything. All the evidence I've collected over 30 years. Bank records, transaction histories, recordings of conversations. Enough to put Thomas away forever, or to clear your name." Her eyes fixed on the drive with naked hunger. "And you're offering this to me because—" "Because I want this to end," I said simply. "I want Rebecca to be safe. I want to live whatever years I have left in peace. And I want you to have the chance I never gave your brother or sister, the chance to be free of Thomas Gregory's influence." "You mentioned a proposition," she reminded me. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Help me bring him in," I said. "Work with the FBI, testify against him. In exchange, I'll make sure this evidence is used to minimize your own culpability. You'll be granted immunity." "I've committed serious crimes," she pointed out. "The FBI won't simply let that go." "They will if it means catching Thomas," I countered. "He's the prize they want. You're just a means to that end." She considered this, her analytical mind visibly working through the implications. "And the $1 million you set aside for me in your will? Is that still part of the deal?" I smiled slightly. She'd done her homework.
Yes.
But not as a payoff. As a new beginning. A chance to build a life that isn't defined by your father. "A remarkably generous offer," she said skeptically. "What's the catch?" "You have to earn it," I said. "Prove to me that you're not just Thomas's daughter, that you're your own woman, that you can make different choices than he did." For a long moment, she was silent, weighing her options. Then she sighed, a sound of both resignation and relief. "He's coming here tonight," she said finally. To this house. He thinks I've arranged a meeting between the two of you, a chance to negotiate. In reality, he plans to force you to transfer the money, then eliminate you as a threat. My blood chilled despite my suspicions. What time? Midnight, she said. He's bringing 2 associates, former military, very dangerous. They'll secure the perimeter first, neutralize any law enforcement presence they detect. And then what? Then he'll enter through the back door. I've convinced him I've disabled your security system. She removed her glasses, suddenly looking older, more vulnerable. He trusts me implicitly. It's the perfect opportunity to take him. Or the perfect trap for me, I pointed out. Yes, she agreed simply. It could be. You'll have to decide whether to trust me or not. I studied her face, so like Thomas's, yet different in crucial ways. Where his eyes always held calculation, hers held weariness. Where his smile was charming but empty, hers didn't exist at all. I'll trust you, I decided, but not blindly. The FBI will be ready. If this is a trick. It's not, she assured me. I've served my father for 40 years. I've sacrificed everything, a normal life, a family of my own, even my real name, all for his ambitions.
I'm tired, Margaret.
Tired of living in shadows. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Tired of being Thomas Gregory's daughter instead of my own person. For the first time, I saw genuine emotion break through her controlled facade. Exhaustion, yes, but also a flicker of hope. The same hope I'd once seen in Rebecca's eyes when she was young, before the world, before I taught her to hide her true feelings. All right, I said, making my decision. We do this together. But first, there's someone else who needs to be part of this conversation. I moved to the kitchen door and opened it. Rebecca stepped through, her expression unreadable as she faced her half-sister for the first time with full knowledge of their relationship. Hello, Elaine, she said coldly. Or should I call you sister? Elaine stiffened. You are supposed to be in protective custody. Change of plans, Rebecca replied. I insisted on being here. This is my fight too. It's too dangerous, Elaine protested, looking to me. Thomas will. Thomas will face both his daughters tonight, I interrupted.
And me.
The 3 women he's manipulated, used, and underestimated. Poetic justice, don't you think? A reluctant smile tugged at Elaine's lips. He always did discount women, considered us useful, but ultimately inferior. His mistake, Rebecca said grimly. Indeed, Elaine agreed, studying her half-sister with new respect. Perhaps we are family after all. As midnight approached, the 3 of us took our positions in my living room. The FBI had been briefed on Elaine's information, their agents repositioned to avoid detection by Thomas's advance team. Agent Chen had strongly objected to my plan, but ultimately conceded when I pointed out that this might be their only chance to capture Thomas without further bloodshed. He'll be suspicious if things look too perfect, Elaine had warned. He expects resistance from you, Margaret. A token effort at negotiation before you ultimately give in to his demands. Then that's what he'll get, I'd replied. Now, as the grandfather clock began to strike 12, I sat in my armchair facing the back door, a glass of whiskey in my hand that I had no intention of drinking. Rebecca was positioned upstairs, out of sight, but able to hear everything. Elaine stood by the fireplace, her posture rigid with tension. The clock finished its chimes. Silence fell. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, the back door handle turned. Thomas Gregory entered my home for the second time in 30 years, as confident and commanding as he'd been the first time. He'd aged well, his dark hair now silver at the temples, lines of experience carved around his eyes and mouth, but still handsome, still dangerously charismatic. He wore an expensive suit, immaculately tailored, with a silk tie the exact color of dried blood. His smile, when he saw me waiting for him, was triumphant. Margaret, he said warmly, as if we were old friends meeting for dinner. You're looking well. Thomas, I acknowledged, not rising from my chair. I see prison agreed with you. He chuckled, moving further into the room. His gaze swept over Elaine, registering her presence with a small nod of approval. "Aren't you going to offer me a drink?" he asked, settling onto my couch with the ease of someone who owned the place. "It's the civilized thing to do when welcoming guests." "Is that what you are? A guest?" "For now," he agreed pleasantly. "Though that could change, depending on how our conversation goes." I gestured to the liquor cabinet. "Help yourself." He smiled, recognizing the small act of defiance for what it was. Always the fighter. "It's what I admired about you, Margaret. You never made things easy." "Unlike Elaine," I suggested, watching his reaction. "She's been very accommodating over the years, hasn't she? The perfect daughter." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Elaine understands loyalty, family duty, concepts you rejected when you left me." "When I discovered what you really were," I corrected. "A businessman," he suggested innocently. "An entrepreneur?" "A criminal," I said flatly. "A man who valued power and money above all else, even his own children." Thomas sighed dramatically. "You always did have a flair for moralistic oversimplification. The world isn't divided into good people and criminals, Margaret. There are just people making the best choices they can with the options they have." "Is that how you justify what you did to Walter? To Rebecca?" "Your own children, Thomas." His expression hardened. Walter was weak. He let emotion cloud his judgment. As for Rebecca, he shrugged. "She's a survivor. Like me." "She's nothing like you," I said fiercely. "No," he raised an eyebrow. "The fraud scheme she and Walter orchestrated was quite impressive. Very much in the family tradition. She has my talents, my instincts. She just needs better guidance." "She needs to be free of you," I countered. "They both do. All your children do." Thomas laughed. "And you're the one to free them? The woman who lied to her daughter for 30 years? Who pretended to be poor while sitting on millions? Who built her fortune on stolen money?" He shook his head. "You're no better than I am, Margaret. You just tell yourself prettier lies." The truth in his words stung, but I refused to show it. "Why are you here, Thomas? What do you want?" "You know what I want," he said, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone. "My money, my children, my life back. Everything that was taken from me when I went to prison." "The money is gone," I told him. "Invested, donated, used to build a life you have no part in." "Then you'll liquidate those investments," he said calmly. "Cancel those donations. Dismantle that life. And return what's rightfully mine." "Or what?" I challenged. "You'll kill me? In my own home, with FBI agents surrounding the property." He smiled thinly. "My men have neutralized your FBI protection, Margaret. We have approximately 30 minutes before their absence is noticed and reinforcements arrive. Plenty of time for you to make the necessary transfers, or for me to extract the information I need by less pleasant means." I glanced at Elaine, who gave an almost imperceptible nod, confirming his claim. The FBI agents outside had indeed been neutralized, exactly as we'd planned. They were playing possum, waiting for my signal. "And if I refuse?" I asked, stalling for time. Thomas leaned forward, his eyes suddenly cold. "Then I'll start with Rebecca. I know she's here, hiding upstairs. Did you really think I wouldn't check the entire house? My men are very thorough." My heart stuttered. This wasn't part of the plan. Rebecca was supposed to be safe, undetected. "You're bluffing," I said, but uncertainty crept into my voice. "Am I?" He raised his voice slightly. "Rebecca, dear, why don't you join us? Family reunion and all that." Nothing happened. No sound from upstairs. Thomas frowned. "Playing hard to get? Fine." He pulled out a sleek black phone and pressed a button. "Bring her down." Still nothing. His frown deepened into genuine confusion. "I don't understand." "My men confirmed." "Your men confirmed what Elaine told them," came Rebecca's voice, not from upstairs but from the dining room doorway behind him. "That I was hiding up there." Thomas whirled around, momentarily thrown off balance. Rebecca stood in the doorway, a gun held steadily in her hands, pointed directly at her father. "Hello, Dad," she said coldly. "Surprise." Thomas recovered quickly, his smile returning. Rebecca, you look more like your mother every day, except for the eyes. Those are mine. The only thing of yours I want is answers, she said, moving into the room, keeping the gun trained on him.
Why?
Why send Walter to find me? Why let him marry me, knowing we were siblings? I didn't know at first, Thomas claimed. When I sent Walter to locate your mother, to recover my assets, I had no idea he would find you too. By the time I discovered who you were to each other, the marriage had already served its purpose, giving him access to your social connections, your client list. You could have stopped it, she insisted. You could have told him the truth. And risk losing my leverage? Thomas shook his head. Besides, it's not as if you were going to have children together. No harm, no foul. Rebecca's face contorted with disgust. You're a monster. I'm practical, he corrected. And so are you deep down. You married for advantage, for status. The fact that it was your half-brother was unfortunate, but hardly catastrophic. He's trying to manipulate you, I warned Rebecca. Don't listen. Thomas turned back to me, his expression darkening. Always interfering, Margaret. Always trying to turn my children against me. You did that yourself, I replied. Through your actions, your choices. My choices, he repeated incredulously. What about yours? Stealing my money, hiding my daughter from me, denying me my rightful place in her life. You were in prison, I reminded him, for fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. What kind of father would you have been? A better one than Frank Winters, he shot back. That weak, pathetic man who raised my daughter to be ashamed of who she really is. Don't you dare speak about Frank that way, I said, real anger flaring. He was twice the man you'll ever be. Thomas laughed bitterly. Is that why you chose him? Some kind of pendulum swing from me? The exciting criminal to the boring accountant. I chose him because he was kind, I said simply. Because he loved Rebecca unconditionally. Because he understood that family means putting others first, not using them for your own purposes. How touching, Thomas sneered. And look how well that turned out. Your daughter became a criminal anyway. Nature over nurture, Margaret. My blood will tell. No, came Elaine's voice, quiet but firm. It's not about blood. It's about choices. Thomas turned to his oldest child, surprise flickering across his face. Elaine, what are you saying? I'm saying I'm done, father, she replied, moving to stand beside me. Done being your soldier. Done sacrificing my life for your ambitions. Done watching you destroy everything and everyone you touch. For the first time, genuine shock registered on Thomas's face. You're betraying me? After everything I've done for you? What have you done for me? Elaine asked quietly. Made me your accomplice? Robbed me of a normal life? Taught me that love is weakness and trust is for fools. I gave you purpose, he insisted. Power. Position within the organization. You gave me a prison, she countered. One without bars, but a prison nonetheless. Thomas stared at her, his confident facade cracking to reveal something uglier beneath. So this is how it ends? My own daughter's turning against me? Siding with her? He jerked his head toward me. We're not turning against you, Rebecca said. We're choosing ourselves. Our future. Our freedom. And what about my freedom? He demanded. My future? My money?
Gone, I said simply.
All of it. The money has been seized by the FBI, every account, every investment, every hidden asset. Your organization is being dismantled as we speak. Your men outside aren't neutralizing federal agents. They're being arrested by them. His eyes widened in genuine alarm. That's not possible. Elaine would have known. Elaine has been working with the FBI for weeks, I revealed. Ever since Walter's death. She's been feeding them information, helping them build a case against you. Tonight was just the final step, getting you to incriminate yourself on record. I gestured to the small pin on my blouse, a disguised microphone that had been transmitting our entire conversation to the FBI command center. Thomas's face transformed, rage replacing shock. He lunged toward me, hands outstretched as if to strangle me. You bitch, he snarled. I should have killed you 30 years ago. Rebecca's gun tracked his movement. "Stop right there," she ordered. "Don't make me shoot you." He froze, then slowly straightened, his expression shifting back to controlled calculation. "You won't shoot me. I'm your father." "Frank Winters was my father," she said firmly. "You're just a sperm donor with delusions of grandeur." Thomas's eyes darted around the room, looking for escape routes, for weapons, for any advantage. Finding none, he fell back on his most reliable tool, his silver tongue. "Think about what you're doing," he urged. "Both of you. We're family.
Blood.
We should be working together, not fighting each other. There's still time to fix this. I have resources even the FBI doesn't know about. Connections that could benefit all of us." "It's over, Thomas," I said quietly. "Accept it with whatever dignity you have left." He turned to me, his expression suddenly tender. "Margaret. My Margaret. We were good together once. We could be again. For Rebecca's sake. For the family we should have been." "Don't," I warned. "Don't pretend this was ever about family for you. It was always about control. About ownership." "I loved you," he insisted. "In my way." "Your way isn't love," I replied. "It's obsession. Possession. I know the difference now." His face hardened again. "Then you've learned nothing in 30 years. Love, possession, they're the same thing. We want to own what we love, control what we cherish. I'm just honest about it." "No," Elaine said, her voice stronger now. "That's what you taught us, but it's a lie. Love is letting go. It's wanting what's best for someone else, even if that means losing them. Like Frank showed me," Rebecca added. "Every day, even though I wasn't his biological daughter. Even when I was difficult, ungrateful. And like I'm trying to show my daughters now," I finished. "By giving them the chance to break free of your influence. To be their own women, not extensions of you." Thomas looked from face to face, seeing his defeat written in our united front. For a moment, genuine sadness crossed his features, not for us, but for himself. For what he'd lost through his own actions. Then the mask slipped back into place. "Very well. If this is your choice, so be it. But remember this moment. Remember that you chose her over me. That you betrayed your own blood." "No, father," Elaine said firmly. "We chose ourselves. There's a difference." The front door burst open. Agent Shin entered, flanked by other FBI agents with weapons drawn. "Thomas Gregory," she announced. "You're under arrest for escape from federal custody, conspiracy to commit fraud, and the murders of Walter Harrington and Jane Doe in the Cayman Islands." As they handcuffed him, Thomas kept his eyes locked on mine. "This isn't over, Margaret," he said quietly. "Not while I'm still breathing." "It is for me," I replied. "Goodbye, Thomas." They led him away, his straight back and proud carriage maintaining the illusion of control even in defeat. I knew it was an act. Thomas Gregory would die before showing weakness, especially to the women who had outmaneuvered him. When he was gone, the three of us stood in silence, the weight of decades of secrets and lies finally lifting from our shoulders. "What happens now?" Rebecca asked finally. "Now," I said, "we begin again. Together, if that's what you want." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I'd like that. But it won't be easy. There's a lot of damage to repair." "In both of us," I acknowledged. "But we have time." We both turned to Elaine, who stood awkwardly apart, uncertain of her place in this tentative reconciliation. "And you?" I asked gently. "What will you do now?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I've never had to decide for myself before. It's terrifying." "And liberating," I suggested. A small smile softened her severe features. "Perhaps. In time." "You could stay," Rebecca offered hesitantly. "For a while, at least. We have a lot to learn about each other. About being sisters without his shadow between us." Elaine looked surprised by the offer. "You would want that? After everything I've done? Everything I was part of?" "We've all done things we regret," Rebecca said. "Made choices we wish we could take back. Maybe that's what real family is. People who see the worst in you and offer second chances anyway. Like your mother did for you," Elaine observed. Rebecca glanced at me, a new understanding in her eyes.
Yes.
Exactly like that. Agent Chin returned, interrupting our moment of connection. Mrs. Winters, we'll need all three of you to come to headquarters for formal statements. But it can wait until morning if you prefer. Morning would be better, I agreed. It's been a long night. After she left, promising to leave agents posted outside for our protection, the three of us moved to the kitchen. Without discussion, I put on the kettle for tea while Rebecca found cups and Elaine located the sugar bowl. A strange domestic scene, mother and daughters, united by blood and betrayal and the promise of something new. I have a confession to make, I said as we sat around my small kitchen table, steam rising from our cups. The money, Thomas's money that I supposedly stole? It never existed. Not in the amounts he claimed. Both women looked up in surprise. What do you mean? Elaine asked. Thomas always exaggerated his wealth, his importance, I explained. The fortune he thought I took, the millions he's been chasing for 30 years, was largely fictional. Created through creative accounting, through smoke and mirrors. But your money is real, Rebecca pointed out. The millions in your accounts. Yes, I agreed. But I earned those millions legitimately, just as I told you. Through investments, through careful management of what little I did have. Thomas couldn't believe that a woman, especially one he'd once controlled, could build something he couldn't take credit for. So, he convinced himself I'd stolen from him. And you let him believe it, Elaine realized. All these years. It gave him a reason to stay away, I said simply. As long as he thought I had something that belonged to him, he wouldn't look too closely at what I was really protecting. Rebecca, Elaine guessed. I nodded. If he knew she was his daughter, he would have tried to claim her too. To mold her in his image, the way he did with you. With Walter. So, the documents in the safe deposit box? Rebecca asked. The evidence you claim to have? Oh, that's real, I assured her. Records of his crimes, his organization. Things Elizabeth told me before she died. Things I gathered over the years, preparing for the day he might return. I smiled slightly. I just never mentioned that my own fortune wasn't part of it. You outplayed him, Elaine said, a note of admiration in her voice. From the beginning. Not entirely, I admitted. I never foresaw Walter finding Rebecca. Never imagined them marrying. Some games can't be controlled completely, no matter how carefully you plan. Rebecca set down her cup, her expression troubled. Was that all it was to you? A game? No, I said firmly, reaching for her hand. Protecting you was never a game. It was the most important thing I've ever done. The only thing that truly mattered. Even when I rejected you, she asked. When I excluded you from my wedding. When I tried to steal from you. Even then, I confirmed. A mother's love doesn't depend on perfect behavior, Rebecca. It doesn't require gratitude or reciprocation. It just is. Unlike his, Elaine added quietly. Yes, I agreed. Unlike his. We sat in silence for a moment, three women bound by complicated ties of blood and choice, of past mistakes and future possibilities. I think, Rebecca said finally, that I'd like to volunteer at the women's shelter.
For real this time.
Not because it's a condition of your help, but because I want to. I smiled at her, seeing a glimpse of the daughter I remembered, the girl with a kind heart, before ambition and materialism hardened her. I think that's a wonderful idea. And I'd like to help with your foundation, Elaine offered hesitantly. If you'll have me, I have skills, organizational abilities that could be useful. We'd be lucky to have you, I told her warmly. Both of you. Outside, dawn was breaking, pale light seeping through the kitchen windows. A new day, a new beginning. The old lies were finally laid to rest. The masks we'd worn for decades, poor widow, perfect executive, loyal daughter, had been stripped away, revealing the complicated, flawed, resilient women beneath. And as we sat together in my humble kitchen, sharing tea and tentative plans for the future, I realized that this, not money, not revenge, not even justice, was the true wealth I'd been seeking all along. The price of rejection had been high, but the reward of reconciliation? That was priceless. 6 months later, I stood at the podium in the newly renovated community center, preparing to cut the ribbon for the Margaret Winters Family Support Foundation's first official facility. Behind me sat Rebecca and Elaine, along with Howard and Patricia Blake, Agent Chin, and Dolores from the Women's Shelter, the new board of directors for the foundation. When I was a young woman, I began, looking out at the gathered crowd. I made choices based on fear. I hid my successes, pretended to be less than I was, kept secrets that damaged the people I loved most. I thought I was protecting them, but in reality, I was perpetuating patterns of deception that nearly destroyed us all. Rebecca smiled encouragingly from her seat, no longer the polished, perfect executive, but a more authentic version of herself. She volunteered at the shelter 3 days a week now, using her marketing skills to help women build new lives, new careers. The criminal charges against her had been reduced in exchange for her testimony against her father, resulting in probation rather than prison time. This foundation, I continued, represents a different choice. Transparency instead of secrecy. Generosity instead of hoarding. Connection instead of isolation. It will provide housing assistance, educational scholarships, job training, and childcare to single parents and struggling families throughout our community. Elaine nodded slightly, her laptop open on her lap, already managing the logistics of our first dozen grant recipients. She had taken to philanthropy with the same meticulous attention she once gave to criminal enterprises, finding unexpected fulfillment in building rather than exploiting. Today marks not just the opening of a building, but the beginning of a legacy. A legacy based not on wealth or status, but on the belief that every person deserves dignity, opportunity, and second chances. As I cut the ribbon, applause erupted from the crowd. My small, secret fortune had found its purpose at last, not in ostentatious display, but in quiet, practical support for those who reminded me of my younger self, those who needed just a little help to transform their lives. Later, as the three of us walked through the new facility, bright, welcoming spaces where lives would be changed, Rebecca linked her arm through mine. "Dad would be proud," she said softly. "Frank, I mean." Yes, I agreed, throat tight with emotion. He would. And Thomas. Elaine asked from my other side, what would he think of all this? I considered the question. Thomas Gregory remained in federal prison, likely to spend the rest of his life there. He had refused all contact with his daughters, maintaining his silence and his pride even in defeat. He wouldn't understand it, I said finally. The idea of giving without expecting something in return, of building something for others instead of yourself. That was always the difference between us in the end. Between who he chose to be and who we're choosing to become, Rebecca corrected gently. Yes, I smiled at both my daughters, one by birth, one by unexpected connection.
Exactly that.
As the sun set over our small town, casting long shadows across the new foundation building, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The betrayals and revelations, the lies and truths, the rejections and reconciliations. I thought about the frightened young woman I'd once been, fleeing a dangerous man with his unborn child in my womb. The determined widow who'd built a fortune while pretending to be poor. The wounded mother whose daughter had excluded her from the most important day of her life. And I realized that all of those women had led me here, to this moment of peace and purpose. Each choice, each mistake, each painful lesson had been necessary steps on the path. The price of rejection had been high, but the reward, these two remarkable women beside me, this foundation that would help generations to come, this sense of finally living authentically, was beyond measure. As we walked together into the gathering dusk, three silhouettes merging into one, I knew that some journeys never truly end. Some stories continue beyond the final page, evolving and growing in ways we cannot predict. But for now, for this moment, it was enough to walk forward together, freed from the past, facing whatever came next with open eyes and honest hearts. And that, I thought, was the greatest wealth of all.